would like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting of September the 7th, 2022 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Brunet, Councillor and Chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given. And if assistance is required, please see our Deputy Clerk, Devan. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, please ensure you place your cell phones on silent or turn off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Roll call. All members of council are in attendance in person. Councillor Pachariva will be joining us virtually shortly. We also have staff in attendance to speak to their area of expertise in person and remotely. Additionally, we have representatives from KPMG joining us this evening, as well as staff from the Niagara Region's Urban Design and Landscape Architecture team. We also have a representative from Upper Canada Consultants and New Again Construction Store joining us, as well as a resident delegation. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I will now ask that Council vote to amend the order of agenda to move the Planning and Economic Development agenda before business, general business and finance. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Statutory public meetings. We have 2 statutory public meetings this evening. The purpose of the public meetings is to receive comments from the public and consider questions regarding zoning bylaw amendment application by Upper Canada Consultants for 4746 Spring Creek Road. We will consider the staff report associated with the item immediately after the statutory public meeting. Sections 5120 and 3412 of the Planning Act requires that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, Council must ensure that sufficient information and material is available to understand generally the proposal being considered, and that Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of giving the public an opportunity to make representations regarding the proposed amendments. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Lincoln before the zoning application is approved or a decision is made on the draft plan of subdivision, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Town Council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT. Personal information is collected under the authority of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act and may be contained in an appendix to a staff report published in the meeting agenda, the delegation list, and/or the minutes of the public meeting and made public part of the public record. The Town of Lincoln collects this information in order to make informed decisions on the relevant issues and to notify interested parties of Council's decisions. Names and addresses contained in submitted correspondence and other information will be available to the public unless the individual expressly requests the town to remove their personal information. The disclosure of the information is governed by the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Our first public meeting is for the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment by Upper Canada Consultants for 4746 Spring Creek Road, PD-39-22. And I will now ask our Director of Planning and Development to provide introductory comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application. It's on the south side of Spring Creek Road, just west with the intersection of Dutch Lane. And the purpose of this application is it's fulfilling a condition of consent, which was approved by the Committee of Adjustment in June of this year to sever off a surplus farm dwelling, a 1-acre portion of the lands. The total lands are nearly 49 hectares, so a very large farm parcel. As this is a condition of consent, the purpose is to zone the remnant piece or the larger area that's being retained for agricultural uses, agricultural purposes only. So that precludes it from any other land use other than agricultural, so that no new building lot is created. This due to it being designated as a prime agricultural piece of land. So as we've done previously, this one was in the works for a little while now, so we're proceeding as we've done before, where we're bringing forth the public meeting as well as a subsequent recommendation on the very same night, because this one was already subject to a consent process. So those are my opening comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bruder. There is one registered delegation for this item. Please note delegations may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Once we have received the delegation, committee will transition directly into the report and the motion. Our delegation for this item is Ethan Lamont of Upper Canada Consultants. Ethan, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't have much more to add other than what staff has provided. It's an APO zoning as a condition of the surplus farm severance. And at the same time, we're also including some site-specific zoning for the remnants or for the created residential property to allow for the existing accessory structure to remain on the property. So that includes lot coverage in the rear and setback. Other than that, I'm open to answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamont. Are there any questions from committee members? Councillor Rinjema.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. I think this might be a question through the staff, but my question is, so this is an APO zoning application, so this is one of the things that we've chosen to delegate to staff in the future. So in this particular case, there's zoning relief required, and that's being handled in the same application. So I guess normally zoning relief would go like in form of a minor variance. In this particular case, they need setback relief in that. So it would go for a consent, and then they would need an application for a minor variance. But it's being coupled with the zoning application instead. So is that, why do we do that in this particular case? Is that to save on application fees and save on process, or why do we do that in this particular case?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Bruder?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just seeking clarification, Councillor, you were asking why are we doing it all as part of one?
Yes, I was asking, so if there was no APO zoning required, then those setbacks and the zoning relief would have been dealt with through a minor variance application, I'm assuming. But because APO zoning is required, they're seeking the relief from the zoning bylaw together with the APO zoning. So I'm wondering why that process. I'm just thinking ahead to the future when these things won't be coming to council. So I'm looking for the reasoning for doing it that way.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, all that other stuff was done with as part of the Committee of Adjustment process here. What we are looking at right here is just for the agricultural purposes only.
Oh, okay.
So everything else was dealt through the Committee of Adjustment process already. So moving forward, we chose to keep it the way we have previously just because we're kind of in a transition point in terms of that delegated authority report that went through. So right now, because everything's already gone through that Committee of Adjustment process, now we're just proceeding with the actual condition of that process, which is to zone the remnant lands for agricultural purposes only.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought that relief was being sought through this application as well. Okay, thank you.
If I just jump in there to that question. So yes, we are seeking relief for setback and lot coverage. That is something that can be dealt with through the Committee of Adjustment, but in this case, just for streamline of process, we decided to do it with the APO zoning.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that was, I guess, my question. It just makes a little bit more sense. But and the reason I'm asking again is because in the future, oh, you can't hear me? Sorry, I'll bring my mic closer. So the reason I'm asking is because in the future, this kind of application won't be coming into council because it's an APO zoning. So I'm just thinking ahead to that kind of situation and how it would play out.
So if I could, Mr. Chair, I think I misunderstood. So yeah, this has been dealt with because this was through the public process, this was identified as a requirement as well through the Committee of Adjustment. But moving forward, I think what you're asking, Councillor, is how would we deal with this once we get to the delegated, moving these through as part of delegated authority? In that case, we would have to deal with it through, or we would typically deal with it through the Committee of Adjustment, which is the other option. So that's how we would do it going forward to make sure that we're dealing with it through that.
So in the same situation next time, they would have to submit an application for a severance and application for a minor variance, and then the APO zoning would be approved by staff.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a timely question. There being no further delegations for this item, I will now declare this public meeting to address the zoning bylaw amendment by Upper Canada Consultants for 4746 Spring Creek Road adjourned. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers that council receive and file as information the following delegation regarding zoning bylaw amendment application by Upper Canada Consultants for 4746 Spring Creek Road. Ethan Leman, Upper Canada Consultants. And I will now ask our deputy clerk to call out the vote.
Thank you. That vote's open. I'm going to close the vote. And that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will move directly into report PD-39-22 regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application by Upper Canada Consultants for 4746 Spring Creek Road. Are there any questions from council? There being no further questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer that council approve report PD-39-22 regarding zoning bylaw amendment application by Upper Canada Consultants for 4746 Spring Creek Road in the name of William and Margaret Zweep. And I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. I'll now close the vote, and that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second public meeting is for the purpose of the draft Attainable Housing and Mixed-Use Community Improvement Plan and amendments to the Industrial Lands and Rural Areas Community Improvement Plan, AD-13-22. And I will now ask our Director of Special Projects, Kathleen Dale, to provide comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to give a little bit of background, the review of our CIPs was directed by council. With any community improvement plan, it's important to review, update, or replace those in order to address, current priorities, whether it's new plans and policies. The intent is that the draft CIP that's part of the public meeting tonight is going. Sorry. The intent is that this draft CIP that's the subject of the public meeting tonight will replace what's referred to as the Beamsville and mixed-use CIPs. The region also recently went through a review of its incentive programs, so it's also important for us to make sure that any financial programs that we have, that they're aligned with the regional programs, because that assists with funding. As part of this exercise, a financial analysis was completed, including the CIP program and the Heritage Grant program. Getting to this point, there were a number of reports completed, and we looked at the existing programs, some of the best practices with other municipalities. We did an online survey with the public and the businesses. We prepared some draft financial incentives. We did the financial analysis, and now we're at the point of having the draft CIP. So far, in regards to input, we've received some input from council, our Housing Advisory Committee, and we recently had some sessions with some nonprofit housing providers and some stakeholders so we can get some preliminary feedback. This tonight is just a public meeting. There's no decision going to be made on this CIP. What we're looking for is to get comments on the draft CIP, as well as changes to the industrial and rural CIP. And it's important to recognize that with whenever you amend any plan or document, you have to get feedback from all groups, because you want to make sure that any document that you create addresses the needs of the community. So in regards to the draft CIP, that's the subject of the public meeting, as well as all of our CIP programs, they're really intended to support community priorities, and those include attainable housing. So the term attainable housing is being used, but what that really means is affordable housing. Also to support tourism accommodation and the agritourism sector. We want to see redevelopment of vacant and brownfield lands. It's important that our existing commercial buildings are improved, as well as the facades of those buildings are improved. And we also want to see reuse of buildings. So in regards to the draft CIP, there's 4 program areas, and they are affordable housing, commercial and mixed use, brownfields, and public realm. Our other existing CIP, the rural and industrial CIP, those programs concentrate on incentives for industrial development and agritourism. So before us tonight, staff have come up with 10 incentives. There's also 4 that are included within the community improvement plan. The reason those 4 are ones that are either mandated by provincial legislation known as the Development Charges Act, or they're within our existing development charges bylaw. So those are mandatory exemptions. The programs that are in the draft, there are a number of new programs, particularly as it relates to affordable housing. There are some modifications to some existing programs within the existing CIPs, and there's one program that's intended to be retained. This new CIP will include all lands that are designated for residential and commercial purposes in the official plan. But again, they're going to be subject to the requirements in the CIP programs. And funding for this new CIP will be considered as part of the 2003 budget. In regards to the industrial and rural CIP, we know that this particular CIP, as well as CIPs in general, do result in increased assessment, which generates new taxes, and for some uses, employment, and that is really very much a high priority for the community. In regards to the industrial and rural CIP, we're looking at changing the source of funding for development charge grants, not the actual amount, so the maximum of $60,000 would remain within that CIP. And to address financial sustainability, we're looking at changing the term of our tax increment grant programs from 10 years to 5 years. However, the percentage of the grant will remain. In regards to heritage grants, since heritages are not actually required to be part of a CIP program, we're looking at funding those from the heritage budget, because in a lot of cases, when people make improvements to heritage buildings, they also need to get a heritage permit approved by the Heritage Committee, and it's quite common for an applicant to submit both of those applications concurrently. So it's really something that is more within the purview of the Heritage Committee. So we did, in regards to our financial analysis, our previous annual budget was sufficient to pay all of the previous grant payments. But based on projections, and this would be for our existing CIP approvals, future approvals in the new CIP, future approvals for the industrial and rural CIP, as well as our Heritage Grant Program, it will be necessary to look at an increase in the budget for 2003. At this point, we're looking at approximately 1.5%. Just to give a bit of a summary, this CIP is a little bit different than some of the existing ones in that only affordable housing and commercial floor space would be incentivized. We have placed some conditions to ensure that the units remain as affordable rental units, and the ownership remains with the first purchaser for a certain time period. We are looking at a higher percentage of tax increment grants for properties that would include a higher percentage of commercial floor space, where there's tourism accommodation proposed, and where brownfields are proposed. We have proposed a maximum dollar amount for the new TIG programs. As I mentioned, the industrial and rural CIP is going to continue with some minor changes. So basically, Mr. Chairman, as I noted earlier, we have had some consultation sessions. This is an additional consultation session tonight. We do anticipate that there may be further meetings to discuss the draft CIP and amendments to the industrial and rural CIP, because we want to make sure that any document that we come up with in the end reflects the priorities of this community as well as the needs in this community. And subsequent to the public meeting or during the public meeting, staff are available to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kathleen. There is one registered delegation for this item. Please note delegations may speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Once we have received the delegation, committee will transition directly into the report and the motion. Our delegation for this item is Dave DeVries of the New Again Construction Store. David, welcome, and please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. I'm a Beamsville resident and also a member of the team at the New Again Construction Store, which is on the corner of King Street and Saddlebauer. And many of you probably know the property as a restore for construction goods. We've recently been in the process of trying to get that property redeveloped and sold for attainable housing or whatever a builder will want to do with it. But we recently met with Matt and the region staff actually yesterday about brownfield grants, and the CIP programs came up. And what we found was the current CIPs and the way the program is written now, you cannot get the regional grants for a brownfield site if the town does not first match, have a similar program. So right now, the town only has a grant available for studies and no grants available for remediation. The region does have grants available for remediation, but the way I understood it was you could only get the regional grant money if the town of Lincoln had a similar program available. So I'm just here tonight to ask you, town staff and town council, to consider adding remediation grants for brownfields as a part of this program. It will obviously allow brownfield properties like this one to get redeveloped and benefit the community at large through increased taxes for the town of Lincoln and more housing options. So I think I covered everything I wanted to say. So thanks so much for having me. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions from committee to the speaker? Councillor Rinjima.
Okay, it's working now, thank you. This might be a little off topic, but I'm wondering, you're saying that you're in the process of considering developing attainable housing. And so would you share with us how far along in the process you are, or is it really just a high-level consideration at this time?
So as a team at the New Again store, we've done some pre-con with the town and studies around that. And we're really just looking to sell the property to a developer that would then develop it and hopefully will.
Oh, You've gone
frozen.
quiet. Oh, he's frozen. Okay,
up.
well, I got my answer, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Easton?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dave, thanks very much for delegating this evening. I do have a question that may have an impact on how a future bylaw is written, and it has to do with what constitutes risk on the property. So I'm not asking you to provide specifics, but could you just reply in terms of what extent you've gone to identify the risks, and along with that, whether or not you feel the work would have to be done in stages and that sort of thing. I'm just trying to establish what we could expect in the future, because some of these sites can become rather complex if they're not thoroughly evaluated in advance. Can you help me with that at all?
So right now, we've done stage 1 and 2 of environmental assessment, and I wouldn't say I'm an expert on everything that our team has done. So right now, we're just in the negotiating process with some developers, and obviously the environmental side is a concern for them. And yeah, it was just, we were looking into what kind of grants were available to help with environmental cleanup, and obviously the CIPs came up. So yeah, I hope that answered your question, but.
Okay, well, actually, I mean, I'm glad to hear that there were environmental assessments done, but my concern is the additional information that may be discovered in terms of how the property was used in the past, and whether or not the initial grant won't be enough, and therefore whoever owns the property may have to make additional appeals for other consideration. But I recognize you may not have that information. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm wondering from our planning side if Mr. Bruder or anyone wanted to make a comment on any of the discussions we've had with the owner of the property that might bring some clarity to the mayor's question.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll start, and then I know Matt's had a more recent meeting with them. So, under our existing community improvement plan programs, this particular property is not even eligible for any type of brownfields incentives because it's not included within the Beamsville Community Improvement Plan, which actually had a grant for studies. I just wanted to point out that we have received similar comments from a number of other proponents regarding the brownfields, so it's something that staff will look at as part of our due diligence. In regards to brownfields, it's not necessarily just, industrial properties that are sometimes considered brownfields. It can be former commercial sites. It's sometimes, there's old gas tanks on a property. There could be salt damage. And usually what triggers the cleanup of the property is in its current use, that wouldn't trigger an environmental assessment. But as soon as you want to propose some sort of residential use on the property, that is what is going to trigger they've already done the phase 1 and 2. They may have to go further and do a phase 3. And the site will have to be cleaned up in order to add a residential use to the property. And I'll defer to Matt to the recent conversation.
Thank you, Kathleen. Mr. Bruder?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not too much more to add to that, just that, yeah, in recent conversations, this is a site that's got a lot of redevelopment potential. I know Mr. DeVries and his team are looking to realize that through working with a potential developer. But currently, yeah, with respect to the results, I don't have the details of the phase 1 and 2, but the risk associated with some of this is, there's further assessment required. We already know that there is some level of remediation, and not doing that, that would preclude the opportunity for a potential redevelopment of this site for any type of residential purpose, similar to what Ms. Dale was just saying. So those are the only comments that I would add.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Bruder. Not seeing any other speakers. Want to thank David, and also in addition to this delegation, council has received joint correspondence for consideration from DeSantis Homes and New Horizons Development Group dated September the 6th, 2022. And with respect to this item, which has been circulated to the members of council, therefore, being no further delegations or information on this item, I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson. The council receive and file for information the following delegation and the joint written correspondence regarding the draft attainable housing and mixed-use CIP plan and amendments to the industrial lands and rural areas community improvement plan. Dave DeVries, New Again Construction Store, and written correspondence provided by DeSantis Homes and New Horizons Development Group. And I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. And I'm now closing the vote, and that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Devan. We will now move directly into the report AD 13-22 regarding the draft attainable housing and mixed-use community improvement plan and amendments to the industrial lands and rural areas community improvement plan. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to possibly Director Dale or possibly Director Wagner, if he's online. Just questions about the funding for what's being proposed or what's being looked at tonight. I know that we do have, again, a bit of a deficit from the past programs that we have to make up. And again, I think that increase that we have that's going to be proposed, we have to honor it. I'm concerned about some of the costs that have been thrown around for the future programs. Not the heritage side, but on the residential development side. I know that we do have a couple implements we put a cap on to keep those costs somewhat reasonable. And I'm wondering if we can't keep those costs contained within whatever contributions are being made by the development itself and away from the levy. Is that possible, or has that been considered that whatever costs we have to either rebate back in the TIG or on the DC charges, it comes exclusively from that specific development, or instead of coming from a levy increase somewhere down the road?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Bruder?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Ms. Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in regards to, I'm going to use the example of the tax increment financing grants. Sorry. I'll use the example of the tax increment financing grants. So a property that's undeveloped might only pay $5,000 in property taxes. If the property is redeveloped, it really depends on the scale. The taxes could go up by 100%, 200%, 1,000%. It really depends on the scale of the development. The intent is that what a lot of municipalities do is the tax increment financing, for tax increment financing grants, for example, when the new taxes are levied on the property, that is where the funding is actually coming from. But it's a bit more of a long accounting process that our finance staff has to go through to move the money, to move the money between different accounts. But the intent is, with a tax increment financing grant, it's really the money that is generated as a result of the development that generates new taxes that would be used to pay for those programs.
Okay, thank you for that. And so then why would it be required to have a levy increase? Because the levy increase would be spread across all residents, not just the ones that either own that building or live within that residence. And that's where I think we're trying to make sure that, again, the premise that we've always kind of put out there, and we're trying to push through on this, is that development can pay for development, and these programs should be funded from development that comes on whatever property is there. To have that then pushed out to the residents, I think it's a little bit unfair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try and answer that. I'm not the finance expert, but, so as an example, if a development after reassessed generates a certain amount of new taxes, instead of, see what right now is any increase in assessment just goes on the budget as a whole. I think what you're talking about is you actually separate that out, allocate some of that money to the CIP budget to pay for those programs. It's really, in the end, I think the result is the same. But I think that's really what you're talking about, is you take the increase in taxes or increase in assessment that's generated as a result of the development. You take some of those funds, you put it directly into the CIP fund, rather than it all going as part of new revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's even with the DC charges as well. So if we know that this new development's gonna go in and they're going to get an increase in $100,000 in taxes, or we're gonna rebate back 40%, so they get 40,000 back. Well, let's take it from that property instead of spreading it across the residents in the town, and then somehow, again, just moving the money around. Again, to me, it's like a savings plan. It's just simply, maybe it's just simple accounting, but it at least aligns itself directly with the project, as opposed to seeing an increase of 1.5% year over year, and everybody feeling the brunt of it. And then we get that other percentage back from the property somewhere down the road, and it goes into another part of the budget, but the residents still always have that 1% increase going in.
I'm seeing Terry in the finance department. I'm wondering if Ms. Trawala would like to chime in. Terry, please go ahead.
Through the chair, yeah, what you're describing is kind of accurate. So the taxes are gonna go up for them, and then they're basically getting a rebate for the taxes that had happened to them. So eventually the tax increment grant stops, and that's when the contribution to the full contribution happens. But the idea of the tax increment grant is that they wouldn't do these changes and upgrades without getting the grant. So the only reason why their property taxes are going up at all is because we provided the grant, and then it provides them a little bit of an incentive, but then at the end of it, all the levy goes back to the town again. So that's kind of the idea with the tax increment grant, is that it's encouraging people to make upgrades to their property. So they're getting a little bit of a rebate back for a couple of years, and then it all comes back to the town. Whereas if they weren't getting the grant at all, then we wouldn't see any increased taxes.
Yeah, no, and through you, Mr. Chair, again, I absolutely appreciate that, and again, you see the benefit to the town, because they're gonna get the increase from having nothing built on that property. The developer itself gets a benefit because they are gonna get a rebate back. What I'm trying to avoid is the residents having to pay for any of that. Like, it should be, tried to be contained within that one property, that one development. That's what I'm trying to make sure happens.
So it does, because the only way they get the grant is once they've actually paid their property taxes. So when the grant application comes in, it actually comes into finance, and we look to make sure that they have actually paid their property taxes and that they're not in arrears. And then we rebate a portion back to them. So it's really cash in and cash back out to them.
So last question, Mr. Chair, I'll try to keep it very simple. So just to keep it clean, will there be any tax levy increases other than the ones from past commitments, which we have to honor, because of any of these proposed new CIPs? Through you to Mr. Waldo or Kathleen or Director Wagner.
Kathleen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So There are some other grants, like for example, the building improvement grant and the facade improvement grant. Those types of grants, people are, they're fixing up their property, they're making it look nicer. It improves the public realm, it improves how things look. Those types of improvements of properties don't necessarily generate an increase in taxes, other than the typical increase in taxes that occur every year. So those types of programs would still have to be funded out of the levy.
Thank you for that. And again, I appreciate that. I think those programs definitely warrant some of that investment, but from the actual development side of things, there will be no tax levies associated with these CIPs.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, that's the intent.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before I go to Councillor Injima, I'm going to ask our CAO to chime in, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think to the councillor's comment, one of the comments I do want to make, and this council has been very clear, we're not incentivizing straight residential anymore. This really is for that new piece of it, whether it be green infrastructure, which council, or at least this current council, has put a priority on, and affordable housing. I think it's important to highlight that in terms of what we're looking at. Straight residential is not something that we're looking at in terms of this current CIP program. One of the other things I think we can report back to council on, there is a lag in terms of when money is issued versus when money comes in on from a tax perspective. So I think we can determine, and we will report back to council, how do we address that lag and make sure that what we're quantifying we think is going to come in actually comes in. There aren't appeals through MPAC and so forth. But it is possible, I think, council, from an accounting practice for us to do that. I think I'll meet with Terry and Lawrence, and I think we can report back to council how we do that. But I think it's important for people listening to realize we are not going to be incentivizing residential development anymore. That is not something that the current program has in place. Council's been very clear on that, and as a result of that, we've come back with these programs. Do we still have work to do by the sounds of it? Absolutely. I think, continuing to engage, ground truthing what we're, I think, in theory, coming up with on paper, going out to the industry, going out to the private sector and saying, does this actually work, is probably where we should find ourselves. I think we want to look and still determine what this program and what the potential rate height may look like, even if there is one. So if there's a way to reconcile that, Councillor, I hear where you're going, and I hear the comments, and I think there is. It's just an accounting practice that I'm not going to speak to and commit to until I talk with Mr. Wagner, who I think's signed off. But again, I think it's important for people to realize we're not incentivizing residential. Heard some comments, coming from the crowd as per your comments, so I think it's important to get that out there.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Rinjima.
Thank you, Chair Brunet. There was reference earlier on to some correspondence received from New Horizons and DeSantis, and I'm looking for it, but I don't see it. But my question was around that. I know there was a stakeholder session, or there was two of them, I think, on August 29th and August 30th, and I'm wondering how that went, and if there was anything pivotal that came out of that that's going to affect the recommendation report when it comes to council. And my other question is, when is that recommendation report coming to council? Thank you.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So actually, the stakeholder sessions, at least from my point of view, went well. The representatives of the development industry were supportive of the direction we were going in. They did want a bit of extra time to digest the information and submit some much more detailed comments. They requested the opportunity to have some further meetings, which is appropriate. There is the potential that there will be some changes made to the CIP as a result of all of the consultation, from whether it's the public, whether it's council, whether it's the developers, other stakeholders. So there potentially will be some changes to the community improvement plan, the draft that's before you. The intent is that given the current election cycle, The final CIP will not come back to, it'll probably be the new council in potentially Q1 of next year.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just for reference, that communication was sent out late this afternoon, 4 p.m., so you can look for that in your email. It was late this afternoon. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, a few questions. First of all, with regards to the, I guess the title or the overall attainable housing and mixed use CIP, and my question is that going to be sort of an umbrella name for this CIP? And if it is that desirable? You know, I'm thinking about developers, investors that would come to our website and look for incentives. And if they weren't seeing incentives under industrial commercial or tourism or other areas and just look to see attainable housing, they might leave. So I wonder if it makes sense for us to break out these, and I'm not suggesting they all get broken out, but to break out the key CIPs and define them so that we make it easy for people to find us. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Kathleen, I guess.
Thank you, Kathleen, or thank you, Councillor McPherson. Kathleen, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, so the name was just something that staff have come up with. I mean, it's not fixed in stone. The thing to remember here is we do have what's referred to as a separate industrial and rural CIP. So that CIP is existing. It's intended to continue with some minor changes. With this other CIP, the intent is it will replace 3 older CIPs. But we're not, fixated on the current name. We could come up with something that might be more appropriate. So we really don't have the opportunity to take the industrial CIP and merge it with this CIP because they're actually doing different things. The industrial and rural CIP is focusing on industrial development and the agritourism, whereas this CIP is focusing on affordable housing and commercial development.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for that clarity. And I think if you're thinking along those lines, then you're bang on. That I just don't want us to miss opportunities. That's what I'm thinking. Is if we buried it somewhere, in an umbrella name, then we might miss out on an opportunity. Thank you. My second question is, and the second and third question we've talked about in the past, so I want to reiterate. Why are we including parkland? When we look at our Parks Master Plan, we know that we're behind in the amount of parkland that we have in this community. And to include that would take those funds that would be going into our parkland reserves, our park reserves, so that we can continue to build out our parks. I guess the other thing that I question in that is, why do we need it? We've got some very, very strong CIPs that we have created. And to me, a parkland is parkland CIP or a parkland piece to the CIP is a throw-in. And it's not going to make or break the deal. So I really question why we would have that as an offer in our CIPs. Through Mr. Chair to Kathleen again.
Thank you, Councillor. Kathleen?
Sorry about that. In response to the question, all of the fee rebate programs are actually referred to as an equivalent grant. So what it means is the money would come out of the CIP budget and it wouldn't be taken away from the Parkland Reserve Fund. So money collected for cash in lieu of parking would still go into that particular fund, what would come out, and the funds for that particular grant would come out of the CIP budget. The reasoning for, we're trying to look, I mean, one of the things that council has adopted is council adopted some core housing needs. And there is, you know, there's definitely a dire need for affordable housing in this community, particularly rental accommodation. So those particular programs are only being provided for the attainable housing programs. So what we did is, as staff, is we looked at other CIPs and the types of programs being offered, and there were other CIPs that had those similar programs. The other thing too is it's always beneficial to have what I would call a menu of CIP programs. You don't necessarily have to activate them or put funding towards them, but if there should be a need, like let's say you do get I don't know, you get a nonprofit affordable housing project, and this would maybe, you know, this might be able to, the more funding that a nonprofit can get for attainable affordable housing, the better. So at least you have the opportunity to turn that program on if necessary. Because if you don't put them in the CIP, if you ever want to provide that type of grant, you can't do it. You would have to go back and amend the CIP. So the idea is to have a menu of different incentives, like a suite of different incentives within a CIP, but not necessarily have them all activated at once.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in response to that, I guess my argument is that we have enough in our menu without adding something as important as parks, and I would also argue that the money's got to come from somewhere. You know, that we need to be able to finance that, whether it comes out of the Parks Reserve or some other reserve. You know, we need to finance that to be able to give it back or give it out. So my suggestion, if we're talking about an open meeting here tonight, my suggestion is to take it out. My last question, Mr. Chair, and this is not new, is the qualifying of occupants or purchasers of attainable housing. Now, I went through the document as best I could and did not see anything that referenced how we will qualify those that will occupy our rental units or purchase our attainable houses for sale. And to me, that is a key missing link, that if we are investing with developers in attainable housing, we need to have the folks that should be lining up for attainable housing qualified and ready to go in. Otherwise, anybody on the street could buy those or go into that rental unit. So we can pat ourselves on the back that we've got attainable housing, but it's not going to the right people. So we need to make sure that that is in our CIP. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And I would just like to make a comment. Obviously, we've heard from our CEO. We're not making any decisions this evening. We're hearing that, you know, we are hearing from the development community, and probably nothing's going to be coming back in a report until probably the earliest of Q1 2023. So I do hope some of these comments that are being made are being captured by staff, and that we can have those discussions as we move forward over the next few months. I'm going to go to Councillor Michalak and then over to Mayor Easton. Councillor Michalak.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, just through your consultations with developers and that sort, have we spoken or received feedback as to the green infrastructure costs that we're proposing to incentivize, making that the standard? Is that being considered by other municipalities or by the province or anything like that? I mean, my understanding is that going green has a cost return savings down the road. And I'm just curious, like, why developers are wanting to incentivize that.
Ms. Dale, did you want to tackle that one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So in response to the question, the CIP programs, in order to be eligible, you have to meet a minimum number of design feature criteria in section, I believe it's section 9 of the CIP, as well as a minimum number of environmental sustainability features. So what we've done is we provided a wide range of options, whether it's native plant species, permeable pavers, green roofs, car share. So what we've done is we've come up with sort of a list of potential environmental sustainability features, and we also had some consultation with our climate change, Shannon Fernandez. She also looked at what was being proposed, because we want to make sure it aligned with Council's recent document. So the intent is in order to be eligible, the developers are still going to have a minimum amount of environmental sustainability features within their development.
I've also got Mr. Bruder, I think wants to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to add further to what Ms. Dale was talking about too, when you talk about, why do developers potentially need something like this to be incentivized where there's, maybe a cost recovery later on? Well, a lot of times developers, there's a significant upfront cost to install it, but they might not necessarily realize the benefits of that cost recovery later when it's in function. I'm talking about some particular land uses that are turned over to condominium corporations or other things. So the developer, while they build it and put the green infrastructure in place, by the time that cost recovery starts kicking in, then there's a little bit of a gap there, and they might not always be the benefactor as well. So I just wanted to throw that in too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Second question, if I may. Something that arose from the environmental concerns. So currently, we don't have no CIP for brownfield remediation. What about, the question I have, is what happens, there's a property owner that has a piece of property and there's a phase 1, 2, environmental done, nothing turned up, start digging, and all of a sudden, things start happening. You start finding things that weren't on the phase 2 study. Would it be possible to apply for a grant of some sort, should we entertain one down the road if an application or a process is already started? Is it a fluid application, or is it a fluid application process?
Okay, so in response to the question, Mr. Chairman, so right now, the only, what I would call brownfields incentive within an existing CIP it's within the Beamsville and the Vineland CIP, and the only thing that it provides is a cost towards studies. So an applicant would have to do a phase 1 to show that there's potential for contamination, and then there's a cost to do studies, to do further investigative work. This issue has been raised by one of the proponents tonight, as well as others in the development community, so it's something that staff needs to look at, and we may need to do a bit more of a fulsome brownfields program as part of this CIP. So it's something we need to look at further. If we do go down that road, it's important to have this in the CIP, because then it's open and transparent, and an applicant is aware of what's available. It's very, very difficult to provide a grant after the fact if it's not within a CIP.
And that's why I'm bringing that up at this time during this public, as you go back and look at this. Just the worst case scenario, and it kind of dovetails a little bit to what Mayor Easton was saying. However, in this case, the situation I gave, there would not have been a need for an application for a brownfield remediation grant until something is discovered after the fact, in the middle of a dig. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In general terms, I think that the work that's gone into this document is really moving in the right direction. And the discussion that we've had tonight has been tremendously valuable. I think there's going to be more good that's going to come out of that. The report is more focused, it's quite selective, and it's a good match to our strategy. So I really believe that we're moving in the right direction in selecting attainable housing in particular. I want to speak briefly, Mr. Chairman, and I will have a question about how the process will handle this. I've lived through almost 2 years of a similar revision at the region. And it wasn't until we started to get specific in the public consultation that the ground truthing was truly revealed on what was happening on some of the properties, what it meant in terms of costs, why the chances were very high that there would be more and more land left out of production. So when I use the terminology production, I'm talking about anything that will make the value of the land increase and be of greater value to the health and well-being of the community. And some of the examples I can give you related to industry, related to what happens when you may double your business space, which at the region, if you double your space, you don't pay any industrial development charges. However, the change from just-in-time equipment availability and having to order things in bulk, which may include what you want plus a whole bunch of other things, means that companies are having to build storage space like they never did before. But they're not increasing jobs. So I've searched through here and I don't really see a reference to the issue of jobs. So that's my first question, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll ask that question of the CAO because I think it's more of a general question. And will we be looking for job creation as a result of this beyond the actual development process?
Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think one of the things we want to do, and again, this is what I'm going to say, the initial public consultation we want to have with our CIP programs. I think if we're to look at our programs and start addressing some of the questions or concerns that some members of council have raised this evening, we need to make sure that there is a repayment and a payback, and that payback isn't just in the terms of dollars or cents coming into the municipality, but what is that multiplier effect when we look at jobs, when we look at things that come to our community. So we don't have that incorporated right now into our CIP program, but it is all about when we look at our industrial and rural CIP, and having lived through the recent regional challenges around our agricultural properties, for example, that we're going to be facing significant development charges as a result of a proposed plan at the region that was since overturned. It becomes cost prohibitive for a lot of our farmers, a lot of our agriculture. When we have 2/3 of our land mass that is covered by the Greenbelt and covered by agriculture, we need to be looking out for those particular properties and what it means to our economic base. And so I think we can incorporate that. I know Mr. Deaney and his team are looking at both the industrial and rural area CIPs and what it means from a job creation standpoint. So definitely something we can report back to. I think Q1 of 2023 is when we're aiming to come back with this, but there will need to be, I think, more consultation with the industry and more consultation with relative partners.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's helpful. Mr. Chairman, there is a chart on I think it's the one, it's table 1. It's the Heritage Restoration and Improvement Grant. We have that, the region does not. And Fort Erie has already challenged that and requested that the region support their Heritage Restoration Grant. It was approved by council, another revision, because there was a mismatch in the goals of the region and the municipalities. And so my question is around that and whether or not the municipality is planning then to make a petition to the region for a similar grant.
Who'd like to tackle that? Kathleen?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, I think, so as part of the region's incentive review, it's not only the heritage grants, it's also the building improvement and facade improvement ones that they're no longer going to be providing any sort of supplementary funding for. So I think in regards to this particular CIP, there's the building and the facade grants, which we will no longer get funding from the region for. In regards to the heritage program, what maybe I think the best option would be for something to come out of the Heritage Committee to request that, you know, the region continue to fund that and then get the support of council and send that off to the region. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, I can see that there's, you know, maybe more opportunities, Mr. Chairman, for having more clarity on that, particularly with a new council coming forward. Mr. Chairman, I believe that on any given day that there are many projects that are planning projects that are at different stages in their evolution, and that they continue to be supported by staff. When some of them become quite substantial in terms of the stage that they're at, they continue to be supported. And in doing that, they are supported by the levy. So I think with the promise of taxes coming in both cases, maybe that concern can be laid to rest. The third question that I have is regarding the reliance, strictly relying on a financial spreadsheet to tell the story of this policy. And so I believe, after having lived through 2 years of not having enough consultation, not consulting the right people, not having sector-specific consultation, and really looking at the economic growth and benefits of these plans, as well as the financial. Of course, the environmental, I think, is well embedded now. My question is whether or not the point has been made adequately enough to ensure that the final report will come stating the full ramifications of those 3 items, and our professional staff may have others to add as well. So I'm pointing that at the CAO because it is a more general operational question.
Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think, you know, what I do want to come back with is some sort of analysis for council, both looking at current programs, but also I think looking at what we do in terms of measurement. I think there's a number of things we need to look at. We've talked about a multiplier effect in terms of what are the wages or jobs that are created when we look at industry and when we bring industry into the community. I think we can look at other areas like leveraged capital, strict employment and what those employment numbers are, housing in terms of the number of new living units that are created, and of course, from a municipal property assessment perspective, what taxation looks like. So I think those are things that we do want to come back with. I think measurement is critical and important when we start looking at these programs, because if we're going to look at them and get, I think, public buy-in, get council buy-in, and I think get industry buy-in, we need to be looking at those particular areas. So there's definitely 5 areas that I'd like to come back with and present to council when we look at this particular program, and also see as measurements moving forward. So I do see Director Wagner on the screen. I do want to ask him, with the chair's indulgence, I think, to address some of the questions that were asked before, strictly on the financial piece. If I could, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wagner, good evening.
Good evening, Chair Brunet. I apologize. I was tied up where I couldn't access the computer. I was listening to Councilor Russell's questions as I was rapidly trying to get to a location where I could respond to them.
Perfect.
In regards to his question about the tax levy and tax levy impact and the reduction or trying to mitigate it for our residents. If you recall from the original report, we've done the financial review. We've looked at what our existing obligations are. We looked at our contributions. We looked at our reserve level. And I would remind council that we set reserve policy for the SIPs to manage a year to a couple of years of SIP flow of funds. The proposal that was presented, a month or so ago, commented on that the approach that I would take, the most prudent approach, would be to fund the existing obligations. And obviously, we would look at staggering the timelines for the new programs so that we don't increase the tax levy as much as we need to cover off both aspects. What I would intend to do is through the timing issue of payments for the existing obligations, so the legal obligations we have today, if there's a delay in any of those payments, we use those to offset our new obligations. Where there are new obligations, that excess money goes into reserves. So it is a one-time top-up that we would have to increase the levy to deal with our existing obligations, but it should be nothing further than that. If we watch the flow of funds, if we track the flow of funds, and obviously the benefit for the town when you look at these is the increased taxes that come in after you've paid off the portion of SIPs that you return to the eligible applicants is used to offset the tax levy for the broader resident pool across the town. I do believe the approach that I presented is not conservative in the nature that we're trying to fund everything at once. I am trying to realize that the timing of money and inflow of cash is something that we need to monitor and track. If there are reduced needs in a given year and we've met our reserve threshold, if we have lower demand, that monies will not be requested through the budget so that we reduce the impact to our local residents. I truly feel for our residents in all communities. I don't think it's something that we should be not cognizant of, and that's the approach that we're trying to take. We do have to increase the portion to pay off the existing obligations, but as those existing obligations decline or fall off, my proposal is continue that contribution to fund the new programs that are coming through. And obviously, we get the tax benefit from those new buildings, those new facilities, those new projects that are coming through the town.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Appreciate those comments. You've had 3 questions. Do you have another question or just a comment? Please go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to make sure that, that we're going to see some changes now that Mr. Wagner is here, that we'll be able to see the changes that, that I was talking about, that apparently he wasn't listening to, that relates to how we're going to bring forward a balanced report that doesn't rely entirely 100% on a financial spreadsheet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one comment back through to either Kathleen or to Matt. So, you know, back in 2017, 2018, we had a development in Centerville. And at that time, I believe, I stand to be corrected, but I believe the regional threshold for affordable housing was around $370,000. I'm just wondering whether this, in your opinion, whether this work that we've done, and I understand and appreciate the communication we have and we will continue to have with the development community, but I think a lot of us are hearing that, you know, with increased costs due to COVID, you know, they just can't make it work. So we're sitting here as a municipality and we're asking them for a certain percentage of their units. So let's say there's 350 units. We're looking for a certain percentage of units to be attainably affordable. And, you know, we're looking at that number to be 30, 40 units, and they're basically saying, we can't make it work. And obviously the reason for that is costs have gone up. So I'm wondering, you know, whether the appropriate work has been done in that to factor in the increase, and do we know what that regional threshold is now? I believe it was 370. I could be wrong, but Ms. Dale, if you could comment on those two things.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So back in, I believe it was 2018, we had 2 applications. One was the development on Serena Drive, and the threshold, if I recall, was just around 380. I don't remember the exact amount. Right now, we've only got figures for 2021 for what's deemed affordable, and the threshold is about $470,000. That is it is going to be, I mean, we've got this comment from the development community. It will be somewhat difficult for them to create affordable units because I suspect that, you know, a 1-bedroom unit is going for quite a bit more than it was back in 2018. So it is something that we need some more discussion on.
Thank you. And I make that comment only because, you know, I look around the table, there's the council chambers, there's, you know, 4 councilors, Councilor Rinjima, Councilor Timmers, Councilor McCulloch, and I have been on the Housing Task Force for a number of years, as well as what we've now transitioned into a Housing and Homelessness Advisory Board. And, you know, we are meeting with lots of developers, lots of people, but, you know, what it seems to come down to is land. And, you know, we can talk about attainable and affordable housing all we want, especially as we come into an election. But I think this is the appropriate time where we need to put, you know, actions, you know, to work. And so I look forward to those discussions with our development community over the next number of months before this report comes out in 2023. Thank you. So being no further, excuse me, I see Councilor Russell. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, again, a quick comment and maybe a clarification on the report that's going to come back. Again, I've heard comments from the mayor and from the CAO about, again, including in that report, not only again some funding options, again, the benefits that go beyond the actual property tax that might be increased, like employment, new industrial land, facade increases, all that kind of stuff. I think that's all great. I just want to make sure that, again, when we're not going too far back, because we've already kind of had this report come back with a motion last spring when we tried to have a review of the CIPs done previously. And again, I don't want to have to go back that way because I think this program has a lot of benefits. I think to the CAO's point, to the mayor's point, we've definitely moved things into the area where I think all of us are comfortable of where we're going, the buckets that we're trying to make sure are hit. It's really just comes down, I think, to funding and some of those assurances, like Councillor McPherson mentioned about how we, and Chair Brunei just mentioned about the attainable housing and how we can kind of target that to people that actually need it. Because if we do start going down that road again of looking, okay, so by having all these benefits, this is what the multiplier factor looks like. Again, there's so many ways that you can then deduce benefits that may not necessarily be directly associated with the program. And you'd have to then go back and look at those municipalities that don't have programs that still receive a lot of those benefits with development, with all of those things that we're trying to attain without having to pay anything. And we've already been down that road. I think we try to stay away from that. I think it's, we've got a really good bare bones new program here, and I think it's just trying to figure out how we make sure that it is viable down the road with very, very minimal impact on residents as much as possible. Just not really a question, I guess.
No, I think all of us would agree with those comments. We have come a long way, and let's not go backwards. Let's continue to move the stone up the proverbial mountain. Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly agree with the councillor that great progress has been made. However, if we don't have the right people delegating on the impacts, we will end up, as we did at the region, with major issues coming forward and them all being overturned, based strictly on the economic discussion. And this included churches, it included agriculture. There was a whole lot of people that weren't consulted. So at one point or another, we will have to deal with those things because there's a lot of reality built into this document as well. So it can create a lot of chaos when you have to keep overturning your policy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Michalak the council received for information Report AD-13-22 regarding the draft Attainable Housing and Mixed-Use Community Improvement Plan and the proposed amendments to the Industrial Lands and Rural Areas Community Improvement Plan, and that a recommendation report be prepared once all comments have been received and any identified issues have been resolved. And I will now ask your deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. Counselor Pachariva, I don't have your vote.
That's because you were too quick on getting that up before I got the e-scribe, so I say yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and that carries, Chair.
We have now concluded the statutory public meeting section of the agenda, and we will now continue to the consent agenda. We are now considering the consent agenda inclusive of the addition to the Town of Lincoln Heritage Inventory Register, 4170 Hickson Street, LS 1122, the 2022 Q2 Financial Report, FN-09-22, and the Tile Drainage Loan Application, Staff Avenue, PD-31-22. Would any member of council like to remove any item from the consent agenda to discuss? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk? There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson that all items listed under the heading of consent agenda for Wednesday, September the 7th, 2022, be adopted as recommended. Addition to the Town of Lincoln Heritage Inventory Register, 4170 Hickson Street, LS 1122. 2022 Q2 Financial Report, FN 09-22, and the Tile Drainage Loan Application, Staff Avenue, PW-31-22. And I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. And I'll close the vote, and that motion carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We are now at the Planning and Economic Development portion of the agenda. Delegations. We have one registered delegation for the Planning and Economic Development agenda. Please note that delegations have 5 minutes to speak, and our delegation this evening is Sharon Jones. Please go ahead.
Five minutes, you got it. I am here in regard to the Ontario Street Vision. I want to thank the town and everything for sending out the survey with all the questions you wanted us to answer. Maybe next time you ask us residents what we want. As far as things that go personally, I have been writing to you all for 4 years. Not once have I received an answer regarding Ontario Street problems. You have now, with our tax dollars, come up with this master plan for Ontario Street without solving any of the problems of today. Excuse me. How do you expect to expand our street? You own 4 feet past the sidewalk. What I see in the vision is a lot more than 4 feet. Bicycle paths have been proposed. Really? Take your life in your hands. Come across the street where I live. You can't do it. Most of the days, it's the Indy 500 up and down the street. You're taking your life in your hands. And you never mind trying to get out of your driveway. 5 stoplights I wait for. We residents have complained for years about the speeding, the noise from illegal exhausts, dirt on our houses from the road, pollution, garbage thrown our lawn, and I can go on and on. But did you ever help us do anything about it? No. I'm sorry, I'm a little upset about Beamsville. The growth of this town has happened so fast, and it's terrible. You have allowed agriculture land to be turned into residential. Green Lane, up by Albright Manor, all graperies, now houses. Uptown, you allowed that building to be built. When I lived uptown, there is a natural fed spring under that building. What did you do about that? Plus, where are those people parking? Follow your bylaws. I brought them with me in case you don't have them. You've allowed gas stations to be built in residential areas. Now one business has turned into 4. Again, no parking allowed, any of them. Businesses on this street have come and go with a blink of the eye, yet you want more rises, high rises, with stores below. People, go take a look and survey the real stores uptown. I did. Their business has not increased with all this new population. These new people do not shop in town, maybe groceries, but they go to work, they come home. We've had shootings, we've had thefts, we've had frauds in the last few years. We never had that in our town before. Next, we have no police protection. Now, I have talked to the chief of police of Niagara. He tells me it's the municipalities that set the number of police that are needed. So now, answer that one. When you call the police, you're probably at the least 2 hours waiting for them. So how do we fix these problems? Now, where's the speeding cameras that we all talked about in February? They were supposed to be up on Ontario Street by the end of the summer. They're not there. Speeding today is unbelievable. Our neighbors have 2 kids. The bus today stopped, lights on, cars are flying by. What are you going to do about that? Now it comes out places to grow. Everybody's talking about land. Well, let's move it up the mountain. Let's go up Mountain Street. All around Phillips Road, there's all kinds of land. Let's start building up there if you want affordable housing. And as I read your vision, I see the suggestion is out with the old, in with the new. Well, our house is old. Do you want to buy it? It's $2.5 million. We'll take it. You can build there.
Mrs. Jones, you have 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds?
Please.
Okay. Well, Places to Grow Act, 2005. If you read it, it states that where there is problems with protection to the environment and human health, the human health issue will prevail. We are looking at both cases for Ontario Street, environmental issues and health issues. You go door to door, you'll find out. Now, if something isn't done soon, we will go to the province. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones, for your delegation. Are there any questions of staff to the delegation from committee members? Councilor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, there was a lot packed into that that speech. I'm just wondering if any staff have any commentary on, again, some of the things happening on Ontario Street, some of the speeding, the Vision Zero. Any insights that staff can provide a little bit just to give some context?
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Yeah, a few updates. So we are working with the Niagara Region Transportation Group in Public Works. They are going to be targeting Ontario Street with their digital feedback cameras, or signs, I should say, again, to continue to raise awareness to motorists along Ontario Street, to drive the speed limit and not speed. So that should be happening soon. That's what we've been told. As far as enforcement, we are working with the Niagara Regional Police Services and requesting that they do targeted enforcement, and they have been out on Ontario Street doing enforcement. So that is an ongoing initiative that, you know, we're trying to ensure is occurring. So those are a few updates as it relates to Ontario Street speeding issues.
Ms. Jones specifically mentioned about the cameras. I'm wondering if you could comment about the Vision One cameras.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chairman. So with the speed cameras, so photo radar, that is being led by the Niagara Region's Vision Zero program. And currently, the Niagara Region is working on finalizing that initiative. And they will be targeting community safety zones as their first priority with that program. So there isn't any photo radar cameras planned on Ontario Street right away, but we're hoping that, you know, that will be expanded to include Ontario Street.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Councillor Michalak.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Through you, I just, I didn't get Sharon Jones's address. Is it possible to? Is like a specific area on Ontario Street, like? Is there a specific area on Ontario Street that you live near? Just, it's not within my ward, but however, it is Ontario Street and it is within the town of Lincoln, and I would like to know the area that you live in that. Okay, thank you, perfect, thank you. Thank you for your passionate delegation.
Councillor Reimer? Pardon?
Okay, Chair Burnett.
Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Chair Burnett. Through you to staff, just to follow up a little bit on Councillor Russell's question. I think I know the answer to this already, but through to Director Graham, I'm assuming we are not allowed to put our Black Cat radar cameras on a regional road.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Reimer, no, we're not, but one thing I should have noted, we have also requested that the region complete a speed study on Ontario Street, because we really want to understand, you know, what is the speeding, how bad it is, and the region are planning on completing a speed study.
Mrs. Jones, did you want to come back to the mic? Did you have something to add?
Well, just what they're asking. Oh, this hurts. In February, Niagara Region had talked about putting up these speeding cameras. It was supposed to be a done deal with this council for Ontario Street. And that is from Caroline.
Right.
Help, Mike. Rael. This was all supposed to happen before the end of summer. And now, when Grimsby Council backed out, it had nothing to do with Lincoln. These cameras were supposed to be up. I'm assuming you blame the region, but aren't you supposed to go after the region for the residents?
Thank you. Maybe, okay. Councillor Reimer, Councillor Rinjema, as ward councillors, I'm not sure if you've had discussions, but maybe it's something that you can, you know, take offline in the very near future to meet some of these specific questions that have been raised this evening. Thank you. Councillor Reimer, did you have something else to add? There we go.
Just to make a comment, and the reason I asked the question, Director Graham, is that as a town, the Black Cat radar cameras that we purchased are being used on town roads quite frequently. And the NRP's response to that has been almost immediate. And so those roads are in our controls, and we're doing, I think, really great work as far as staff and council in affecting speed on our town roads. Our hands are tied. There's only so much we can do with the region, but I wanted to point out that on other roads, the Black Cat Raiders I think are doing a really good job. Thank you, Chair Brunet.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rinjima.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mrs. Jones had a lot, again, to say, and this is all pertaining to the vision for Ontario Street. So I'm wondering if staff, and this may be flushed out as we review the report, but if staff can maybe speak to, on a high level, how, what came up in their mind that during this visioning process and during the things that Mrs. Jones was saying, is there anything that popped into your mind and said, well, I think some of what we're doing under this visioning plan is going to help? So that's my question.
Mr. Bruder?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and definitely something I could speak a little bit further to when I'm before you making the presentations subsequently. But in the meanwhile, I will say absolutely, there are components of this visioning project that are designed to assist. I heard a comment, out with the old, in with the new. Well, not necessarily, as you'll see when we go through the presentation. We are recognizing in many cases where there is an existing lower density residential contingent, and it's likely going to stay. This visioning project isn't something that's going to happen overnight or within the next year. It is a long-term strategic document. And it sets out, potential methodologies for assessing transitional impacts with some of these lower density units. It sets out some guidelines for assessing impacts to privacy and all of these things that we hear about when we have these infilling opportunities that come before us. So I'll go through it a little bit further when I make my presentation, but there's also the regional complete streets policies, all that work that's being done by the region while reaching out to the lower tier municipalities to improve the overall functionality of their road corridors for all users. So again, more to come, but in short, absolutely, this visioning project is definitely designed to help with those items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So that was my question. I mean, some of what you were getting at there is talking about mitigating impacts for future development. But I'm interested in hearing how some of what's going to happen under this visioning plan is going to help the existing issues in advance of what we see future development affecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just wondering, Mrs. Jones made a comment about the gas station that was built and is now operating on Ontario Street. Not the first time we've heard that as a council. I'm wondering if the CAO can speak to, as a municipality, our ability, if any, to influence who buys a particular property, and what they can do with that in terms of the business that they're going to operate moving forward. Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Definitely a lot to unpack in what Mrs. Jones highlighted there, and I'll start by saying, staff will make ourselves available to sit down with the ward councillors and Mrs. Jones. Your question, bylaw or no bylaw, and I'm not sure what Mrs. Jones is referencing, but I definitely will sit down with her and read through the bylaws again. We can't limit if a pizza joint wants to open up in town or if a gas station wants to open up in town. Within our commercial corridors, those are legitimate businesses, and I think to your question specifically, can we limit what type of business opens up in our commercial corridors? I think the simple answer is no. Can we go out there, and I've heard this from numerous residents, and try to get interest from other types of businesses that we deem important from residents? Absolutely. And we've heard different types of businesses residents want in our community, and our economic development staff are doing that on a regular basis. But to answer your question specifically, do I have some tool within our toolkit to stop a gas station from opening or a pizza place? The answer is no.
Thanks very much for that clarification. Councillor Russell.
Sorry, just one more clarification through you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Jones also made a reference about the number of businesses operating within that gas station. And again, I know I drive by it daily. I've never bought gas there yet, but I know that there is a food business there. There might be a tire place there as well. Is there any limitations on the number of specific individual businesses can operate within that building? Through you to
Mr. Bruder.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not necessarily, though it's governed by other things pertaining to items like parking, for example. I know we've had conversations with that particular property owner about what businesses can go in there. I don't need to go into detail about that specific property here, but those are the types of things that kind of guide how many can go in there. They all have different commercial uses, can have different parking requirements and things like that. But, you know, a property being general commercial or any other property that has any zoning on it, you know, because it is a private property owned by a private property owner, we don't go in so far as to just zone it and have one use or two. Usually with any zoning category, there are a range of land uses. And when it comes to a commercial zoning category, there is a wide variety as well. So that doesn't really govern how many, but other items in the zoning can, in this case, something like parking, which I know has been the subject of conversation on that property.
Thank you, Director Brewer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So again, Mrs. Jones, thank you for appearing before us this evening with your delegation and bringing your comments forward. There being no further discussion, no further delegations, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell. The council receive and file as information the delegation from Sharon Jones regarding the Ontario Street Vision and Streetscape Master Plan PD-38-22. And I will now ask your Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And that vote is now closed and it carries. Thank you, Chair.
We are now at section 8.2 on the agenda, reports, and we are now considering report PD-38-22 regarding the Ontario Street Vision and Streetscape Master Plan project. I will now ask our Director of Planning and Development to proceed with the presentation. We also have Caldine Ahmad and Julia Vanderline from DeVries from the Niagara Region's Urban Design and Landscape Architecture team in attendance to assist with any and all questions. You have a maximum of 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
All right, good evening, everybody. Happy to be before you to present. As you know, we've been working on this for quite a while in cooperation with Niagara Region. Khaldun is here. From our Regional Urban Design and Landscape Architecture team. It's been a very iterative process with lots of stakeholder and public input received throughout. We are now at the point where we have considered all of that input, gone through a significant exercise from the point of creation of renderings and 3D visuals to provide overall demonstrations of how the vision has come together for the Ontario Street corridor. So a lot of work that's gone into it to date. And today I'm going to go through just a little bit of a rehash the project a little bit, its overview, location, and purpose. Just very quickly go through some of the background review and some of the stakeholder engagement results that have been realized as part of this process. And then go through the vision itself, looking at the overall vision, the character analysis, and some of the complete streets typologies that, again, our Niagara Regional colleagues have been working on in consultation with us, and then go over some next steps with you. So next slide, please. So when we embarked on this, I think it's very clear, or it should be made very clear, that this wasn't an exercise where we were looking to change things like land use permissions. This isn't something where we were evaluating, increased density over and above what land use permissions are already there. We were taking what is already there in terms of a policy context from the regional and town point of view to come up with an overall vision of a vibrant and cohesive corridor. So in realizing that, the town has long identified this corridor as a means to accommodate future growth. I heard references to the Places to Grow Act, the growth plan, which has been updated several times. including the last in 2020. We've all been through this before. There are a few strategic growth areas within the town as a whole where we envision the anticipated growth to go, this being one of them. And it's further evidenced through our Go Station Secondary Plan project that we went through a number of years ago. So all of these things have been set in motion to build to a more compact build form and accommodate some of that growth for multiple years, spanning back even before this current official plan, which was implemented in 2016. Also, you know, considering the downtown area of Beamsville as well, there's a connection there between the QEW and there. So very, very important corridor on a variety of levels. And also with the Go Secondary Plan process and everything that's gone forward as a result of that, looking at it as a potential major transit station area. So next slide, please. So again, just the study area. It goes all the way from the north side of the QEW all the way down to King Street. Important corridor transitioning from that visibility along the QEW, a major access way, providing a good east-west link, and then all the way down to King Street where our central business district lies in Beamsville. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the project, I've kind of already gone over some of these things. So we know that we've identified this as an intensification area. We know there's going to be growth here. We've seen some early stages of planning for that growth via various development applications. So the goal here is to look at this proactively, to manage that growth, to realize different areas within the corridor and consider those as a cohesive framework to make sure that we have a vibrant public and private realm that kind of feed off each other and create that vibrant corridor. I heard just tonight, you know, that people don't shop at some of the establishments along that corridor. Well, that's something we want to change through a revitalization of the public realm over time and looking at private realm improvements on public property too, that we can now consider as part of planning applications going forward should council endorse our overall vision. Next slide, please. So I won't go through all of the work to date. I know it's a very cluttered slide, but it includes a lot of important points of this study from, you know, undertaking our background review. I kind of alluded to it before. There's a lot of policy that pertains to this corridor, a lot of existing design guidelines, a lot of existing land use permissions. It was important to review all of those in their totality to make sure that, you know, that firm understanding is there in terms of how we move forward strategically. There's been considerable stakeholder input to date. We've had multiple touch points in terms of public open houses. We've had a couple of those. We also devised our technical advisory group, which consisted of various town departments, public works, community services, regional staff, obviously, utility providers, the downtown Beamsville BIA, making sure that we have that technical component as well. We reached out to all property owners along the corridor. So we had kind of those two touch points with stakeholders and with members of the public along the corridor. Next slide, please. So from a background review standpoint, really the result of that, and I won't go into too much detail, but really kind of three big major themes kind of presented themselves as a result. Community identity. We need to respect and enhance identity while sensitively incorporating this growth that we keep talking about. Design guidance. There's opportunities to really enhance the overall street corridor through design. And then complete streets, looking at the road functionality and the public realm improvements from all perspectives, from all potential users. Next slide, please. I briefly touched on all of our public and stakeholder engagement that we've undertaken. We've had interactive sessions. As an example here, I know you can't see all the labels, but just to show you, this was an online exercise when we were holding the open houses online. Just to provide everybody with an opportunity to kind of put a sticky note all throughout the corridor on, you know, any specific areas that they want to look at, they want us to look at, ideas that they might have. Very good brainstorming session. We did this on multiple occasions. We also had a public survey, which was very well responded to. Lillian, I think we had over 300 respondents, yeah, so very well responded to, and that gave us a lot of guidance into the main themes that everybody wants us to consider as we look at this corridor. really what we heard a lot of, we heard some of it tonight, definitely traffic movement, functionality of the corridor, definitely looking at transition, looking at sensitivity to existing land uses when we consider some of the intensification opportunities that are already apparent on the site with some of the land, or on the corridor with the land use permissions. And then just looking at also improving that vibrancy, having, you know, retail establishments, restaurants and things more readily available, spilling out into the public realm, just to really provide better opportunity there for residents. Next slide, please. So I won't read these, you see them here. These are just kind of the key vision statements that resulted. Really, again, focusing on improving the vibrancy, aesthetic, you know, beautification of the corridor, and making sure that it's a connected community with a high level of functionality, with a mix of land uses to provide, you know, opportunities to live, work, and play all in the same corridor. Next slide, please. Again, just kind of further to that, some of the design principles at a high level that go into the vision. You know, you look at aesthetics, accessibility, how is it used, how does it look, what kind of feature does it provide for the town as a whole, how does it, you know, enhance our local economy, how does it provide better and more opportunities for residents to shop, to relax, and to utilize the corridor from a pedestrian level standpoint. And then obviously too, to look at traffic. The Regional Complete Streets work to date looks at functionality too in that regard in terms of different types of street typologies, which I'll get into a little bit more later. Next slide, please. So when we looked at the corridor as a whole, really it became apparent that there's three kind of distinct character areas here. And that's based on a variety of things. It's based on what's there right now. It's based on what could be there, based on existing land use permissions. It's based on input received to date as well. So we've got our innovation district kind of at the northern area, and then the central area, or the kind of the transitional mixed use neighborhood, and then our downtown neighborhood. Next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt you through you, Chair. May I get a show of hands to extend the time until the presentation is completed? We're at our 10 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll try to be a little quicker. So the first being the innovation district. This recognizes here that kind of that exposure to the QEW. It's within our GO secondary plan area, and it's designated as such, office commercial. You know, it's envisioned that there'd be a, you know, an innovation hub that could eventually be here, taking advantage of that visibility from the QEW, making sure that we're also taking advantage of the proximity to the potential future GO station. And as such, you know, that provides an opportunity here for a very active streetscape in terms of beautification. You know, you see here lots more street trees and street furniture, recognizing there'd likely be some pedestrian activity due to some of the employment uses that we anticipate, providing more, you see also just general street furniture to beautify the area, just to pull in and enhance that business investment over time. So this is the first area, and this is one where we see, you know, there's not as much residential that's there now. It's largely industrial, prestige industrial type uses, which we envision over time either remaining or moving more into that office commercial. There is some residential allowance, but that's more in the immediate vicinity of the GO station where it's proposed to be situated. Next slide, please. The next is the mixed use neighborhood. This is kind of that middle area here where we see some existing permissions already for mixed use type developments in our GO secondary plan, in our zoning bylaw as well. A lot of general commercial zoning on the west side, but on the east side, we do have a significant amount of low density residential. And really, we don't envision that to change too much just because of the narrow lot depths there. It kind of limits in terms of what could be. So there's an importance within this corridor from a transitional point of view, especially. So through this vision, we incorporate considerations into our planning application process. You know, we look at things like angular plane, but not just to the street, but also side yard angular planes as well. to try to enhance that transition, a better step-back design for some of these buildings, because there is land use permissions that already exist for heights up to 6 stories along the west side in various areas. So making sure that we realize that, looking at more enhanced incorporation of things like sun and shadow analyses and also wind comfort studies, things that really are dictated by the built form. And when they're considered to this extent, they can guide some of that, that transitional sensitivity. So really, this is a key location because you start to see some of that more smaller and ground level commercial animating the street a little bit. We've got, you know, you can see, and by the way, these renderings here, they're just high level just to show the built form. They're not meant in any specificity. They're just for demonstration purposes, which is really what this vision is all about. So you can see how there's some tables on the one side there that could potentially spill out a little bit as a result of some smaller scale, could be restaurants, could be retail offerings or what have you. Next slide, please. So this is our most southern area of the corridor going to King Street. This is considered the downtown neighborhood. We've already seen a fair bit of redevelopment, you know, being the Shoppers there and the Krabby Joe's and all of that on the west side. We envision there to be redevelopment in the central business district, similar type with residential units above, retail below, but we want to be a little bit more sensitive here in terms of height, just because of the escarpment being right there and the overall character that currently exists. We're also undertaking the Heritage Conservation District, so again, there's that sensitivity incorporated into the vision here. Even we looked at some potential for some unique aspects, not necessarily designated heritage, but you know, historical aspects of some of the houses that exist on the east side here. And in the vision document, there's some concepts or you know, guidelines on how to preserve those. But here you can really see how the pedestrian experience resulting from some of the commercial and retail activities spill out into the streetscape and interact with it directly. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned a few times the regional complete streets typologies. This is something the region's been working with for quite some time now with the lower tier municipalities to consider overall functionality in terms of the existing corridor and how it can be improved, again, over time. These are not things that are going to happen in the immediate, well, some might, but the overall vision is something that will, you know, be perpetual, and it will take what we envision to be quite a while to realize. Next slide, please. So the urban general wide, that's kind of more in our innovation district that I was mentioning before. You see here a little bit of a wider streetscape reflecting the existing width of the corridor being a little wider in that area already. Where widths are needed, again, these are guidelines. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is exactly how it will be, but this is a guiding framework of what types of facilities should be included. But you've seen it many times. There's opportunities as development occurs. Road widenings are required as part of those. We've done it many times. The region's done it many times, and that's envisioned to continue as time goes on. All these complete streets typologies would be, especially along Ontario Street, would be subject to a future EA anyway. That would really solidify that design. But you see here some separation for the active transportation facilities. And then again, the 2 lanes on each side coupled with some street trees, wide sidewalks and amenity areas on either side. Next slide, please. This is more in the mixed use neighborhood. You see some enhanced boulevard plantings that can be incorporated. Mid-block crossing, one's envisioned at Homestead, a new mid-block crossing to enhance that pedestrian experience. Heard today about, you know, the speed and the safety and how to cross Ontario Street safely. That's something that, you know, we continue to engage in dialogue about how to design these mid-block crossings. So more will come on that. Next slide, please. And then in the main street, narrowing a little bit, again, recognizing the existing situation to some degree, but also, as you can see, really main theme of enhancing pedestrian movement along the corridor with some separation from vehicular traffic, and then a lot of beautification, you know, cycle racks and things like that throughout. Next slide, please. So just in terms of next steps, so we're before you now. It's taken a lot of work to get to this point, again, from a visual rendering perspective, working with the region on complete streets policies which aren't fully completed yet. So that work continues as well. We want to make sure that we're incorporating that in real time. But what we wanted to do today is to get your endorsement on the overall vision, how we generally see the corridor looking and functioning at a high level over time. Because from here, we go into some more detail. We go in looking at developing urban design guidelines that are a little more specific than what we currently have. A lot of them in our official plan are general guidelines. We want to get a lot more specific to implement the vision and also produce an overall demonstration plan that we have initiated work on, but again, is subject to council's endorsement of the overall vision. And also this vision you'll see here is used by the town and the region to inform the future EA that I was talking about to implement complete streets on Ontario Street. So with that, my presentation is finished. Happy to take any questions, and actually I'll invite Khaldoon up as well so he can field some in conjunction with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruder. Welcome, Khaldoon. Thank you for joining us. I have, first up, Councillor Pachariba.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Thank you, Matt, for the presentation. Thanks, Khaldoon, for being here. Matt, and I think it's very important to note that there are no plans to have 4 lanes running from Ontario or from the QEW to King Street. You know, we hear talk about traffic, we hear talk about congestion, and most people think the answer is 4 lanes. And that's not the answer, is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, not necessarily. That's what the Complete Streets approach is designed to do. It's designed to, you know, enhance the pedestrian experience, maybe take, and even some of the private realm improvements and land use over time takes kind of that reliance away, that auto-centered corridor away, just to provide a little bit more of an overall functionality improvement. I don't know, Khaldoon, if you have any further.
Yeah, I think just to add to Mr. Bruder's statement, I think the promise of Complete Streets is really to maximize the potential of your corridor in many different ways. And you want to have more people walking, more people riding bikes. We see a whole, essentially, as a revolution that's happening now with electric bikes, and more people wanting to use those, looking for a destination. And I think when you have a well-balanced corridor, it really, you know, when you have essentially a sense of enclosure in that corridor that's from the trees, for instance. So it's not just having the lanes, it's also the other aspects, the trees, the sustainability that comes along with it, and I think all of those elements combine help to address some of Ms. Jones's comments about traffic, to calm the road down and to make it more interesting and usable.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And by no means am I the expert like you two, but you know, Councillor Brunei and I have been, you know, immersed in this since the beginning when we launched our Active Transportation Committee, and we were the ones kind of, you know, preaching the Complete Streets lingo, right? To look at it, it's a cross section, and we see that in the mid-use neighborhood that the pedestrian part is actually pulled to the side, so it's not curb face with the traffic. There's a median that separates it. So, and anyone that's been involved with AT, why don't people cycle? Because they don't feel safe. And something like this will make them feel safe. So I appreciate that. And the on-street parking, and again, you know, having numerous talks with Mr. Graham and Mr. Bruder and the Complete Streets, and having on-street parking and bump out, it tends to narrow that street. So in essence, you slow down. You know, if it was 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out, you think speeds are bad now, it would be like a raceway. We just need to drop a checkered flag. So I appreciate this. And I like too the part about Ranny Square. So when we opened Ranny Square, 2005, it was envisioned as a multi-purpose kind of destination to be used as a farmer's market on the weekend, to be used as special events, and then parking kind of took center stage on that. So plans for that, guys. So would that be dovetailed into the redevelopment of the high school grounds and the relocation of town hall? Knowing we've got all that parking in front there at the old town hall, that could then be used as secondary when we activate Randy Square, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think that could be an option for sure. You know, we're looking at how to better utilize that particular space. There is definitely an opportunity that's identified in the vision there. How we realize it and what we dovetail it into, I think, you know, there's still flexibility. Again, this isn't something that we're going to look to, it has to be implemented necessarily by X. You know, if there's an opportunity to streamline some improvements to it through another process, absolutely, we can look at it. But this was really meant, again, as a vision in terms of what this could be and the higher function that it could achieve.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair Bernay.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director Bruder. Thank you again for the presentation. A few questions. The first, again, I'll be the first to say I do not handle change well, and looking at the renderings, again, they're very progressive, and again, trying to swallow them down without any timelines associated with them is difficult. So I'm wondering if you could relay some of my anxiety and some of the others that might be listening on what the potential time frame this could be. Like, it is very aggressive. And again, I think there are some very positives about it. But like, what are we looking at in terms of time of when it may come to fruition, or some implement of it may come to fruition down the road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, are you talking more about the buildings that are along it, or are you talking about the public realm improvements?
Probably the whole thing. Like, again, when I look down that west side of Ontario Street, it looks like it's all condos. Like, it's very hard for me to sit back and just accept in one sitting. Like, again, knowing that it's going to be coming staggered over time, over the next 30, 40 years. 'Cause I know that the population growth is up to 2051. Yeah. So can you just give me some sort of a time frame associated with it, perhaps?
Well, for sure, and through you, Mr. Chair, I think, you know, as development happens over time, we've seen it now. Yes, we've seen, you know, a bunch of development applications go through a zoning stage, for a couple of them kind of in the relative area this year, but those are just through the preliminary stage. We still have to do all the detailed design for those, which is where this document will come in very helpful as well. There's development sites that we haven't even been approached with yet. These are all multiple years out. Just because you bring up a good point, you know, you see this and think, oh man, like, you know, next year or in 5 years or whatever, this is how it's gonna look. No, this is just, it really takes a look at the land use permissions that are there right now. It takes a look at the overall good planning practice through our background review, through our review of policy that's already in place, looking at what the ultimate could be, which could be, to your point, you know, our planning horizon's out to 2051. There could still be areas not developed like that at that point, absolutely. But it looks at what it could be there, and just to make sure that we've accounted for that long term. That's really the goal. From an EA standpoint, just to look at the public realm and some of the improvements that the region might undertake in the regional corridor, I don't think that's been solidified yet. It would probably, I don't think it would be done all at once necessarily. You know, it could be done in segments. Khaldun, I don't know if you have any information, but.
Just in terms of the EA, we haven't yet exactly scheduled the EA, because, you know, we're still going through this now, but potentially through the EA may decide to, you know, I mean, it's a long corridor, so definitely it'll be handled in small chunks, and it'll probably look at the areas where change is needed most, and then look at how the other areas beside those areas become essentially try to evolve over time. So it's difficult to answer that question, but the EA will help crystallize how just what those timelines are, and just to essentially help everyone. When you do an EA, the next step is to do the detailed design essentially of the corridor, and then it's basically constructed after that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Second question through you. As far as the solicitation of information from the public and some of the feedback you received from Speak Up Lincoln, from the questioners, again, I saw in the presentation a few of the suggestions that were there. I'm wondering, just for full transparency, like what happened with the critiques and the negatives? How did those pieces of information come in and get filtered into the process?
Yeah, I can take that, Mr. Chair, for sure. So, yeah, there was absolutely. I think most of the critique is, centered around, what the intensification might mean. I think some people think maybe the sky's the limit in terms of some of the building heights and people that can go in there, and what that means from a traffic perspective as well. A lot was traffic that we heard at the public meetings, in all transparency. But, I think really what came out of that was we were trying to develop now these additional considerations. I mentioned, for example, it's just one example, but the angular plane, what I really like now is looking at it from a side yard setback instead of just to the front. I think that's important too, because it demonstrates that we're looking at this in terms of what's beside, these potential infill sites. So that was kind of, some of the things like that are what came out of some of the critiques. Generally though, a lot of it, I think traffic for maybe one or two of the sessions was number one, but the second was, well, we need more places to shop. We need more places to eat. There's not enough around here to do, more or less. So that came out actually very clearly as a critique throughout the public process as well. Those were kind of the two main ones that I centered on.
Okay, thank you for that. And my last question through you, Mr. Chair. What's the, and again, this kind of goes off of what Councillor Pachariva had mentioned about the traffic and the question about are we having 4 lanes and that could cause a speedway. Well, at the same time, again, you could also, because this is the main conduit in and out of Beamsville, you could also have congestion if you bottle it up too much. So what's the regional commitment to make sure that traffic is managed appropriately? Like obviously, none of the renderings had a truck on it, which I found very optimistic. But I'm just wondering, what's the regional commitment to make sure that we are not going to be creating that speedway that a lot of people have concerns about, but at the same time, for the people who are commuting or trying to get to and fro, that we're not bottlenecking things up with extra stops, trucks in the way. Like, what's that commitment from the region? Any insight?
Well, through you, I think, Director Graham too has been relaying a lot of those concerns and continues to work with the regional counterparts as well on some of these things. I know we've all talked at length about truck traffic. Good point about the trucks and the renderings. We did have a bus, I think, right, Kelly? But no truck, yeah. So, that's something, fair enough. But I think really as we work with the region, I think the big commitment is, this complete streets approach, because it will require an EA to complete a design. And when you go through an EA, you look at a lot of different options, a lot of different scenarios. It's very data-driven in terms of what ends up ultimately happening. I know there's already been a lot of data that's been implemented into the complete streets approach. So, I think that's the commitment right there, knowing that there's going to be that study, that detailed design process where they don't just look at one type and away they go. There's going to be an array of options considering all of these inputs that you mentioned.
And Mr. Chair, just say, sorry.
If I can just try to supplement, really the beauty of this vision, from my standpoint at least, being at the region, is that when we do these EAs, we often don't have the benefit of a community vision for a particular corridor. And it leaves the EA with a lot of head scratching as to what that corridor should really be about. What's it supposed to function primarily as? And with this vision, there's going to be a significant input by this council as to the 3 areas. Well, we want this area to have this character, this area to have this character, and this area to have that character. And I think that translates into understanding how the transportation, as a result of the built form that might happen along here, what that transportation capacity should be like, and how it gets incorporated into the corridor. What portion of it is going to be vehicular? What portion of it could it be pedestrian and cycling and so forth? So the EA will address all of those concerns that you brought up, Councilor.
Thank you. Not a question, because I know I'm at my three, just a comment. Just along the lines of that regional commitment and looking at that truck traffic, maybe there should be some discussion further with the region about if and when we do go down the path of the truck bypass, that potentially Bartlett Avenue could become that regional road, and we take over Ontario Street to make sure that we have full control over all of those. Again, this is going to be a pretty elaborate plan with the visioning. Maybe this is the part to start having those discussions and get that commitment from them. That wasn't a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very, very timely, because the CAO and I were just talking about that, and he wanted to chime in on that exact same comment. So, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thanks for the opportunity, and Councillor, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think looking at this holistically and from a systems perspective, and ensuring that what happens on Bartlett and the plans that we've discussed with Council on Bartlett dovetail to what we're doing on Ontario Street are important. So goods movement, how we're moving trucks, what we're doing with the intersection at Mountain and King Street, I think all will play into that. And those things need to be looked at again, I think very concurrently. And on your question before around timelines, often our technical staff are far more reticent to provide detailed answers like that. The CAO can take a few liberties and provide some answers like that. So I would tell you, this is a vision. There's associated policies that now go in place with that vision that help make it happen. That work still needs to continue. We've heard about EA processes. EA processes aren't fast. I think we all know that. They're going to take multiple years. We then have the private sector element that needs to, I think, come to the table and look at what's happening along that corridor. So am I comfortable saying this is a decade beyond decades in the making when you look at the whole thing? Yeah, I think that's very accurate. So if that allays, I think, the fears of yourself and other residents, I'm comfortable saying that. But we are looking at something that is, a generational almost type, project that we're going to start now, that a number of us are either going to have, retire or have moved on. Maybe not you and I, Councillor, but a few others when this comes to fruition. It is going to be a decade to 2 decades before I think we see a lot of this come. So I can say that. I wouldn't put that on, again, our technical staff. And I do see the daughter of one of our regional staff here really wanting the CAO to shut up so that Dad can go home and spend some time with his daughter. So thanks, Councillor, and thanks, Chair.
Councillor Rinjema.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yeah, I mean, this is a vision, and that's the idea, is to really, be proactive and think ahead and make sure that everything's in place, so when people come along to build and they want to invest in our community, they know what the expectations are. So it really is being proactive, and it's as Councillor Russell was saying, some people might look at the design and think, when is this going to happen? Everything's going to change. But the point is to direct the change over time and not just let it kind of happen, because we've all seen that happen in some communities. I could name some where it's just like, what happened here? What happened here? And how did it happen? So this is really good. So I have a question about, so a significant amount of the reasoning behind the increased density in the area of Ontario Street closer to Green Lane is tied to the idea that there will be a GO station in Beamsville eventually. And I often hear comment from people that they aren't convinced this is going to happen in the foreseeable future. And I think they mean the next decade or two. They're not convinced. What can we share with people in terms of the status of that initiative, and how does that compare to other related Metrolinx projects in the area?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I'll turn it over to our CAO, but before I do, I just want to, I always like to add in this clarification, because I hear that all the time, that, the GO secondary, or the potential GO station is driving intensification there. I would argue, and I've done it many times, you've heard me, that, that area, in or around that area, has long been anticipated an area for, to accommodate growth with or without the station. I mean, the GO station would definitely drive it from a transit-oriented development point of view, for example. But I would argue, irrespective of that, it would still be an area that would accommodate a fairly significant amount of growth. But I'll turn it over to our CAO for
Okay, that makes sense, although we do have a secondary plan called the GO Station secondary plan there, so thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and maybe I'll tackle that last part of your question first, Councillor. I think we've titled it the GO Precinct Secondary Plan, for the very purpose that these decisions that we're making now and plans like this our 20-year plans. And when we look at what the next 20 years looks like, we do need to start that planning now. Metrolinx is still working with a private sector landowner that owns 38 acres in that site. It is a local landowner. You know, I think a number of members of council and the public know who that landowner is. I don't think the landowner often likes to make themselves, you know, publicly as known, and that's just a natural course of what this particular family, who's been in our community for over 100 years, operating a business for over 100 years, does. I say that to say it's a very locally driven initiative on this particular piece of property. We are working with Metrolinx. This is different than most GO stations. There are only about 3 to 4 GO stations right now anywhere in the province that come about as part of what the province is calling a transit-oriented communities model. Used to be called transit-oriented development. It's now called transit-oriented communities. This is something that this provincial government under Premier Ford, when they came into power, decided to challenge communities and Metrolinx that it shouldn't be the province paying for stations, but rather the landowner. There's a value uplift when train stations come to respective communities, and if that respective owner wants to see that value uplift, they should be investing in building the station. That is the model that's been brought forward. That is the model that we have in front of us. Metrolinx is guiding and working with the landowner to look at what the station potentially looks at. And we have a private partner, as I said, that is very interested, that is looking at the entire 38 acres. That landowner is much more comfortable in the, you know, in the realm of industrial and prestige industrial development. That's what they do. Those are the types of buildings they build. So that will be a very much a mixed-use site. They've asked both Metrolinx and the municipality, as well as the region, and the region plays a key role in that because higher order transit is a regional responsibility in some ways in terms of leading some of those initiatives, but the region is playing an active role in that. We are looking at the site, and we are looking what should be at that site. There will be residential on that site because you know, there needs to be ridership. There has been an initial business case that has been done and has been undertaken to the tune of about $250,000 by Metrolinx and the property owner. That isn't monies that the municipality put forward. We have the results, and Metrolinx has the results, as does the landowner of that particular analysis. So how quickly it moves is really how those negotiations go. You know, what sort of station? What does the station look like? Where on the property are we going to put the station? How much parking spots do you need for the station? Can we put prestige industrial next to residential next to a station? And what you're likely going to see from Metrolinx is a station that likely is in the bottom of a building. That is a new model. It's what's called air rights that they sell on top of the building. And again, it helps pay for and brings a ridership that is almost immediate. We have track corridor improvements that are going to happen all along the corridor. Those are going to happen whether Lincoln has a station or not. But in this case, I think we're very fortunate that we've got a local landowner who is very keen on making this happen. Again, if I was going to give you a timeline in terms of this happening, it's probably, you know, in that 5 to 10 year horizon, and I think that's accurate. You just now heard an announcement with Niagara Falls and St. Catharines that Metrolinx and the municipality are finally working on 2 stations and revamping those 2 stations, which is going to take a number of years. So, you know, I would say in that 5 to 10 year horizon, I think that's accurate. But could it move a lot faster because we have private sector at the table, whereas government is at the table in those other 2 municipalities? Yes, it could move a lot faster. Again, it'll be very dependent on some of the agreements Metrolinx and the private landowner have.
Thank you. Very interesting answer, and I think it's really relevant because I think a lot of people are thinking about that as Ontario Street gets visioned out. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Michalak.
Thank you, Chair Brune, through you to Matt. It's a great concept. I think it looks nice. Great vision. Just when you're doing the traffic studies and that sort of thing, how far in advance, how far are you forecasting traffic to produce a single lane each way?
Through you, Mr. Chair, are you talking about what went into the complete streets, into those?
Yeah, like I'm looking at slide 17, like urban general narrow street.
I'll actually turn it over to Director Graham. I think he might have some insight.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, and through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. So I know the region, when they look at their transportation network modeling, they are looking out to the 2051 horizon. So they are looking at future traffic demand and development. So that modeling does look far out into the future to make sure that we're, you know, on top of, you know, what traffic is anticipated to look like.
And I asked that question just because, you know, we have 4-lane traffic going to 2-lane, could be some compressions, and currently it's busy already. We're adding more homes, and not to repeat what other councilors have said, I'm just concerned, like, what this looks like 10, 15 years from now. And then second question I have, if I may, doing some math on the addition of, you know, the urban general narrow street and this sort of a street, it comes out to about 86 feet wide in you know, standard old-fashioned math. Do we have to expropriate any land to accommodate that width of street and sidewalk and bike lane? When I do a virtual Google Street tour, some areas of Ontario Street look pretty narrow, but I don't know what 86 feet or whatever meters it is.
Yeah, good question, and through you, Mr. Chair. You know, along Ontario Street, just like what you said, the width that exists today really varies. In some areas, it's wide enough to incorporate those typologies within those areas. In other areas, there might need to be a little bit of widenings that are undertaken. Those can be done a couple of ways, often guided through the EA process too, or through a development application process like I mentioned. There can be road widenings across a frontage that's taken when we do things like site plans. It's happened before on the corridor already, actually, up near downtown. Expropriation can be an option as well. Again, that's a lengthier option. That's an option that's probably considered against other alternatives, but there are opportunities to do this. Again, this is over time, and there, you know, there will need to be some consideration, I would think, at various locations throughout the corridor. So, Khaldun, I know you have something to add.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is that when you look at those cross-sections, those are lifted from our Complete Streets work, and the intent is not to just essentially try to add up all of those essentially elements. Those are ingredients that might happen with different widths. Some of them may be incorporated in places and not in others. So those are just, you know, what you're seeing there is kind of like basically a range of options that could happen within that particular typology, but not necessarily all of them happening together. So with respect to the width, in general, the corridor that we've designed to is that 26.2 meters, which is the width of the corridor that's in the region's official plan.
Okay, I appreciate thank you for that answer. I just do know that there have been instances where street widening, street reconfiguration, let's take, for example, Martindale Road,
Yeah.
where there was a requirement for expropriation, you know, in some cases, and I'm not sure if Ontario Street's one of them.
Yeah, you know, this is why you generally want to do an EA, so that you can identify what your land needs are first and try to tailor your street design to that. And you know, that's the benefit of doing an EA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Chair Bernay. Thank you for the presentation. I find this very exciting. I think it's very important to have this roadmap of where we're going. And it's very unfortunate that the residents didn't stay for this portion, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this is and what this means, and that it's happening tomorrow. And when I hear it's going to be decades, I get a little bit disappointed with that. I understand it, you know, these things take a lot of time. But when we look at the map on, I'm in the report on page 21, where it shows the future school, I'm just wondering if consideration would be to, and I think this might have kind of been touched on, just certain features or things that we could start with that are not going to take decades. And if you could just talk to that, if that's been discussed, and you know, some of these mid-block crossings and some of the safety features by the new school. So just,
Yeah.
if you could comment, Matt, thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. I think when we said, you know, it could be decades, I think we're talking about this whole corridor being done, but, you know, could there be various aspects of it? Khaldun mentioned done in smaller stages a lot sooner, absolutely. And I would hazard to say there will be certain sections of it that will come much sooner. And again, like if there's opportunities to streamline work, for example, you know, the school, very important consideration. Definitely as we go through things like design exercises according to this vision, when we're looking at this vision to guide us, we do streamline and consider all of those different angles when we're coming forward. So your point's well taken, and the answer is absolutely, there's
No,
opportunity.
that's great. I'm really happy to hear that, because you know, we've heard the concerns and we're hearing the concerns, and whatever we can do initially to alleviate traffic and speeding and safety is priority. Just one other comment, Chair Brunei. So I'm looking forward to the visioning for Victoria Avenue next in Vineland. So just want to put that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Easton. I'm going to Magna.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Khaldun, I believe that the first rendering you did was in the spring of 2016. Am I correct?
As far as this project is concerned, or?
Well, we were getting ready for it,
Yes, yes.
2016. So we're 6 years already down the road. And I didn't really go to the trouble to compare the two drawings, because I think when you're talking about the physicality of design, especially streets, there's a limit to what's going to happen when you're not starting from scratch. One of the things that I like in this report, and there's a lot of things in it, I really compliment the staff on the approach that they've taken. It's very, very positive, shows great opportunity, and you're, I think, being quite honest about the realities as well. The vision piece is very, very helpful. You're basically saying this is how it works now, and this is how it could work. So you're sending a message to the community. I'm hoping that as people read this over and over, as the conversations continue, that maybe that will help stir some imagination amongst people who are, you know, maybe have more of a bend when it comes to the creativity of these things. So thank you very much for that. And then I went over to Appendix A, and you've got key directions that covered both the private and the public realm. And what I took from that was that you were providing some instructions to developers. This is what we're looking for. So it appears like we're going to have more influence and control by virtue of the way you've set this up as an information document. We have a relationship as a 3P. And I don't see this as fixed in stone either. I see that vision, I see those directives as things move along. Who knows what will happen at Green Lane? We know that that needs to be much safer. We know that that's a great route for cyclists, or it could be. That may spark some other more beneficial ideas. So what I have two questions. One is about how much control over what we do now. How much control will we have in the future? How do you see that changing? And the second is, I'd like more clarity around the rail crossing, because it seems to be getting more and more important that we not just have a level crossing there. So those are my two questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I'll start. Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I'll tackle the first one, especially when you talk about control, when you talk about, what does this mean for us as we go down the line working with developers? I think, this is, you said it yourself, a very clear demonstration of the lens from which we're going to be looking at and evaluating their projects, their proposals that they're bringing in. Again, this isn't something where we're, it's not something where we're changing land uses or anything like that, but what it is it's providing a guiding tool for staff and for the developer as we work together on these projects to come to a resolution that really reflects this ultimate vision. I would add too that, like I was saying in the presentation, this is really the overall vision. And from this, should it be endorsed by council, we can now include even more, get into the specifics of some further design guidelines. I can tell you the guidelines that are already in our official plan with respect to, things, some people may contest them, but things like buildings addressing the street and things like that. Those are things that, are good planning practice. We incorporate those into site plan processes, and developers typically follow them. They know that that's what they're going to be asking, and it's going to be exactly like that when we examine detailed design projects like this moving forward. We'll have this enhanced set of guidelines that precipitate from this overall vision as well. So, I don't know if I would necessarily use the word complete control where, thou must in every circumstance, but what this does is really, this provides a very clear framework and guideline on how we're going to be proceeding when we evaluate development applications. So I'll turn it over to you, Kaldu.
Yeah, through the chair, the way that I would describe it is that it's kind of like a song sheet, because when someone's walking down, for instance, the sidewalk, they don't necessarily know what's private and what's public. Where does the public start? Where does the private begin? And what this vision does is that it ties those two together so that they're seamless, so that you have a harmonious, unified experience as you walk down the corridor. And that's why those elements are there to, because, when we ask, at the region, for instance, for street trees or bike racks, with the town, of course, through development, we get essentially questioned on that. They say, well, why do you need it? And now what we have is a really compelling vision that we've never had before. We have a compelling vision that demonstrates to them how it's being tied together, how all these elements come together and create this incredible experience here in Lincoln.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify on the GO issue. If it takes 5 to 10 years for the GO station to be built, would we be viewed in a positive way if we continued on with our plans? If the property owner were if they desired that we could start to build in that area, knowing that we were providing the density and activity that is really required to make a GO project, a GO station successful. Is that a correct assumption?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's still a positive step no matter what, working towards that, exactly what you described too, in terms of a redevelopment of that site. This vision would have a very key component to play in that as well, so absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quick questions through you. Could you give us a little bit more insight into the grade-separated railway? Just, again, layman's terms, because when I read that, I know we get a lot of questions and concerns already right now with limited rail traffic and moderate congestion on Ontario Street, that they want some sort of an underpass or an overpass. I'm assuming that's what it is, but could you just give some more insight into it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Kaldu might be able to provide some insight as well, but that's exactly what it would be. I know, for example, that development there on the northeast side, on that corner there of Ontario and Greenleaf, there's a 20-meter strip along Ontario to facilitate exactly that, some type of grade separation. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but that's the amount of property that the region has determined. They own it now, they want to own it to make sure that they have that flexibility when that need is confirmed for that grade separation, if it is. Probably at one point or another, it probably will be. So there is that ability via the land that's there to look at that. But that's what the grade separation would be, an overpass, underpass. I don't really know exactly what it would be, but.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, follow-up. What do they use to determine whether there is a need or not? Like, we always get asked and we're told really that we should be planning for our infrastructure way before we ever need it, and there's a feeling out there that we wait until it's required before we build it. And this would be one of those things, if we are envisioning this process unfolding over the next 10, 20 years, that this should be one of the markers that we make sure gets put in.
Yeah, good question. Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't know the exact threshold of where, the warrant or need for this lies, but what I can tell you is that we're sharing in real time, not only, the developments that are happening and what the results of their traffic studies, but also the overall traffic study that we told you that we worked on as well in conjunction with the region. So we're providing that real-time information as well as forecasted based on some of the development concepts that may have been brought to us at a very high level. So that information is being provided to the region. Again, I don't know, Khaldun, if you have any insight, maybe not, but I don't know what the threshold is.
Through the chair, no, I don't have any specific insights on that.
Okay. Sorry, I was just gonna say, to you, Mr. Chair, maybe that's something that we could have a report back, or not a report back, but just some follow-up on to give us some insight somewhere down the road when you determine it. Last question, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Very simple.
Go ahead.
As far as the parking and, again, I'm looking at that west side where there's likely going to be a lot of mixed use. Again, I had my first concern this week from an entrepreneur that purchased one of the units underneath Bench Condos. And he was concerned about the limited number of businesses options that he had in that unit because of the limited amount of parking. How do we make sure that down the road, if that stretch is going to be all mixed use and there's going to be retail or restaurants, whatever it might be, that the parking is sustainable for whatever venture may go into one of those units?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's an excellent question, one that I've been struggling with too. I know the particular property you're talking about and some of the challenges there. Moving forward, we've now amended our site plan agreements to get a lot more specific in terms of the parking ratios. Here's what it is. We're making it known from the get-go, the range of, if, for example, it would have commercial zoning on it because it'd be mixed use, identifying based on the spaces, the overall spaces provided, here's the range of businesses. So we're trying to be a lot more specific so people go in there, developers go in there with their eyes open, knowing what could be in there. And, we have those conversations a lot earlier now too, to make sure they know from the get-go, even when they start their design, this is going to be impacted, the types of commercial establishments you can have on there, because they do have different parking requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just, it's, in short, just being a lot more proactive as we go through the process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So I just, I only had one comment that I wanted to bring up, and it's been raised by Mayor Easton and now Councillor Russell, and that is the grade separation. And I really feel and I really hope that the region and everyone else that needs to be at the table is paying attention here, because we talk about vision. And I hope it's not just lip service, because vision means we need to look down the road. And we've done a TMP that will direct us to 2051. We don't have to look any further than Burloak, where that grade separation in 2018 was estimated to be $60 million. And in June of this year, the new price for Metrolinx to the city of Burlington and the town of Oakville is $177 million. So, the region, we hear it all the time. We hear it from the MTO, they don't want to talk to us. We hear it from CN, they don't want to talk to us. I just hope that the region is looking at this through the proper lens and making sure that we do have the vision, so the day we need a grade separation, we're prepared for that.
The only thing I would say to that, Mr. Chair, is that there are going to be, in this process, there's multiple points where this issue gets considered. For instance, at the implementation stage, which happens next, and of course at the EA. So those, that is a larger question that can get handled at those points, and it's not going to get lost.
And I appreciate that response. We're hearing decades. We've been waiting for a corridor to go up Bartlett and Park Road in Grimsby for 30 years. And the EA, still sitting there kind of getting started, kind of not. So I just raise it because, we got a lot of people watching this, and we only get one chance to do it right. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone. Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Final comments.
So if I could, just a few comments on the, I think the grade separation or the grade crossing. I will send to members of council the kind of assessment tool that Transport Canada uses. It is a federal jurisdiction that undertakes this particular item because it is CN and CP that really are leading the charge on this particular thing. So we do have some of those criteria. There's a number of criteria. You'll see when I share that with you, everything from traffic volume to train volume to vehicle speed to queuing. All these things can trigger a potential grade separation, and so it will be something that we will share with members of council and ensure that the region's aware of it. It's something that's a conversation on the other 4 potential stops across the way. So I know something that we will be sharing in terms of what denotes a grade separation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pachariva, I see you are looking to chime in. I'm going to allow you to make a comment. Please keep it brief. You're the only thing keeping us between a 10-minute biological break. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Yeah, and just a quick salient point on that, and Mr. Kirkopoulos had mentioned about the region taking over the train stations in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls as part of the all-day GO service. And you had mentioned grade separation. So we've got to remember too that the train tracks coming through the town of Lincoln will now be doubled, right? And if St. Paul Street West gets a new bridge because it's been seen to be like streets of San Francisco, I think we deserve a grade separation, which is far more important than a little bumpy bridge. So, salient point. Thank you, Chair Brunei. You're a beauty.
There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva to receive and file for information the presentation and report PD-38-22 regarding the Ontario Street Vision and Streetscape Master Plan Project, and endorse the vision document as Appendix A, and direct staff to begin implementation by finalizing urban design guidelines and the overall demonstration plan used to further guide and inform development along the corridor. And I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. Thank you. That motion carries.
So, there being no additional reports to consider for the Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda, we have now concluded the Planning and Economic Development Committee. And so we will be rotating to allow Councillor and Chair Adam Russell to assume the chair, but it will be after a 10-minute biological recess, which I have been asked multiple times for over the last hour, and I do apologize. So 10 minutes, if we could ask everyone to be back at 9 p.m. Thank you.
Just waiting for our staff to get in line here. Welcome, everybody, to the GBNF, General Business and Finance Committee agenda. We are starting at item 7, moving right to delegations and right past delegations, as we have none tonight. So we will go into item 7.2, the reports. We are now considering the 2021 year-end treasurer's report, FN-08-22. We have Carlos Alvarez and Kamoni Gooden, I apologize on that first name, from KPMG joining us virtually to answer any questions. Oh, do members of council have any questions? I thought that happened after. All right, I see no questions, so there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet to receive and file report FN-08-22 regarding the 2021 year-end treasurer's report and approve the 2021 audited financial statements as presented in Appendix A. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And that vote's closed and it carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. We will now consider Report FN-11-22, the 2022 Information Technology Project Status Update. I will now ask our Manager of Enterprise Services to provide a presentation. Please note you have a maximum of 10 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Just for introductions, I'm Mike Brousseau, Manager of Enterprise Services here at the town. I also want to acknowledge this report was prepared with the assistance of Sean Jackson in the audience and Saeed Kazmi, who is joining us remotely. I can change the slide, I think. I can. Here's our agenda. I know I only have 10 minutes. I promise I will go as quick as I can. I'd also ask to your forgiveness for the size of the text. There's a lot of information here. So these are our current IT projects that we are undergoing on the town. I'll start from the top and go down. I think the first one you're all very aware of, our council chamber upgrades. It's facilitating our current conversation. This solution is partially deployed. It's working quite well tonight, which I'm happy to see. There are still some improvements. I'm just going to keep moving. There are still some improvements to deal to the system. We're working with the vendor to deploy those. This project is currently funded, so we're not asking for any more money. The second thing on here, 2021-2, our Enhanced Cybersecurity Initiative phase, is continuing to move along. We did deploy some AI-based detection for our different systems over the last year. We're continuing to deploy more solutions to make sure that we are ready to fight emergent cyber threats. I'm sure you continue to hear about other municipalities who are being attacked, most recently the last few months. So we want to make sure we're ready for those. The third item here is deferred. This is our collaboration portal. This would be to allow for more effective internal communications and document management. We're not there yet. That's deferred for this year. It does have an approved budget that we'll draw from ideally next year. The fourth item here, our building system. This is championed by our building department. This is a modernization project to modernize our permitting and our billing systems. Right now, this is coming along. We have just signed a contract with a vendor to deliver this solution. We are optimistic that that solution will be in production by the end of the year. It will not be fully transitioned from the prior solution. We'll have a parallel deployment. It is approved. We have funding for it, and there are multiple phases to that process, but we're just getting started on that one. The top here, 2022-2, the planning component, you'll note building, planning. They have separate things. Part of it is for fines and resident payment. The second thing is primarily for planning. That's for approvals. That is likely to be the same vendor, but they have different modules that they'll offer us for the different components. So we are looking at a cohesive solution across a single vendor. It is not yet deployed, but once the first component is deployed and proven to be effective, we'll continue to move forward with that vendor. 22-3 here, our website's improvements. I'm very excited to say that we are just entering the beta testing for that solution. I think you'll all be very excited to see how it looks. We'll be able to show you very soon. That will be going to staff for review. They started last week and next week, and then we'll be going to public beta testing in the coming weeks. So we're really excited to see what our constituents have to say through our Speak Up Lincoln page. The third item here, our graphical information system. So this is GIS. Right now we have a vintage solution in place. It doesn't cost us very much, but doesn't do very much for us. So we're looking to unify the solution that the rest of the Niagara region uses. At present, we are the only ones using the solution we're using. And it's gotten us this far, but we are seeking a joint licensing with the region for a new and updated solution, which we should have deployed by the end of the year, which we're excited about. The fifth item here, endpoint automation. This is management of the fleet. As you all know, when I say fleet, I mean computer fleets, not cars. That's a new context here. So this is for making sure all of these devices that you have in front of you, all of the devices that our staff have at home, and all the devices at our remote sites are all appropriately managed. This is to making sure they're patched, we get software, and this is part of the security solution. This solution is currently being deployed as we speak. Your computer should all have it as of a few days ago, and we're continuing to deploy it to the other sites of the town. The fire emergency management solution, if the chief was here, I think he would tell you that the solution we have needed some love. We are investigating a solution that is new to the country, and we've worked very close with the vendor to make sure that it will work for our Canadian context. So it's a little bit like a guinea pig situation, but it does mean that we have a lot of control over the way that the solution is deployed. We're also getting a good deal, which is a nice added benefit, and it makes sure that we can direct this solution as it gets deployed in other municipalities, which is exciting. The last two items here I will pay special attention to. 22-7 there, the EDRMS system, Electronic Document and Records Management. This is a solution championed by the clerks. It's an ongoing project that is partially funded. We are requesting additional funding. This solution is to digitize our record footprint across all of the departments, digitize approvals of processes, and then making sure that we unify our file management across the town. So less paper, more digital. We can appropriately archive things, and there aren't things hidden in cupboards, hidden in unusual shared drives. This is a really critical system to make sure that we are both fulfilling our requirements for archival of old documentation, but also to make sure that if there are freedom of information requests or things like that, that we can complete them in a timely way. There's a lot of efficiency built into this project so that a lot of the paper-based processes we have now can move into this solution. Anything you want to add, Madam Clerk? Okay. The last item here on our current projects is our HRIS system. That's Human Resource Information Management System. So this is an amalgamation of a lot of existing processes in a lot of different places. This is payroll. This is onboarding, offboarding, making sure that accounts have appropriate access. This is vacation and scheduling and leave management. This is a solution that brings together a lot of paper-based and duplicate processes across the municipal services. It is partially approved for funding, and we are also asking for additional funding on that item. A vendor has been selected through a public RFP process. And as you'll see in the appendixes, that one is in Appendix B. We're asking for that additional amount there to move ahead with that award. These are our future projects. There are many, and they are optimistic, and there are more to come. Municipal law enforcement and ticketing. This is digitization of both delivery and payment of ticketing, which should be more efficient, more effective going forward. Data analytics and visualization is a long-time interest of the town. These are dashboards, both public and private, to help us with planning and solutioning going forward. There is a plan for a fully overhauled financial system that we're hoping to deliver and start scoping at the beginning of next year. That's a long-term project. It's going to take a couple years, but the digitization of those processes will be a good fleet management system. This fleet management is actually things with wheels. So this is making sure that we're properly greening all of those assets, that we've got proper value, that we know where they are, all of those kinds of things. And then the last thing here, asset CRM and work order. This is a lot of things that'll probably have to get broken out. But this is making sure that when things go into places like Public Works or building and planning, that there's a central place that all those requests can be serviced and can be appropriately directed within the town as needed. I know, right? A lot. So we're going to continue, of course, to work on the 22 things that we said we would do and you told us to do, which is great. Those are some of the 2023 projects that are coming up. There may be a few more, and you'll be the second to know after me. And then, of course, we're committed to making sure that we're providing ongoing status updates to council to make sure that we're appropriately using resources and time of the town. I did it. 10 minutes.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that presentation. Also appreciate Sean and Syed for contributing to it as PMs. I'm going to open it up to council if anybody has any questions. Councillor Mikulik, you are first up.
Thank you very much, Chair. Russell, through you to IT. Thank you very much for your report. Just a question about digitizing documents. So currently, we dispose of documents after a certain set periods of time. I'm guessing because we just don't have the space, or you just don't store paperwork. Would it be possible with a program like that for us to store documents for, say, longer periods of time? Given the fact that we wouldn't require much space in the physical world, but, you know, the digital world, I think it's a lot more affordable and cheaper.
Yeah, through you, Chair. It depends. There are legislative requirements for how long we have to keep certain types of documents. So some things we do want to dispose of for legal discovery reasons. Sometimes we do have to keep things for long periods of time, and as you say, it can be cost prohibitive. If we have legal requirements, it's non-negotiable. We just need more and more space. So yes, there are definitely efficiencies to be gained by these processes because the cost of digital storage once implemented is certainly much lower than more cold storage around the town. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mikulik. We next have Councillor Brunet. Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Chair. So through you to Mr. Brassot. So you're looking for us to approve a motion tonight for, if I'm reading this correctly, $243,000.
Through you, Chair, that's correct. Two separate motions.
Okay, I'm wondering if Mr. Wagner is available to speak to the Infrastructure Reserve Fund and how we're currently sitting with that, where this is projected to be received from.
Okay. Director Wagner?
Through you, Chair Russell, to Councilor Brunet, I expected that question. We're currently sitting at in excess of $3 million in the infrastructure reserve, so we have adequate funds to support these initiatives. Additionally, if the other projects in the future get delayed or fall off the list, we have approximately just shy of $800,000 in our modernization reserve as well to tap into. So I'm comfortable with the resources being available to advance these projects, and we can delay them. And obviously, it may change the timing or the delivery of scope, but when it comes to administration and efficiencies, I think these are important projects to proceed with, and I am comfortable and confident that we have the resources to fund them.
So through you, Chair, I appreciate Mr. Wagner's comments and appreciate the fact that it sounds like our infrastructure reserve fund is in healthy position. I guess I'm just, I'm sitting here, not expecting this. I'm not sure about my other colleagues. We are in the midst of an election. We're probably, 2 months out to the start of a budget process with a potential, new council of sorts. So I guess I'm just looking for, the risk mitigation, in terms of electronic documents and HR. I think Mr. Wagner did indicate that possibly it could be delayed. I'm not asking for a delay. I'm just saying, is this something that we need to deal with tonight, or is this something that can be left to the new council that's sworn in the midst of a proper budget process? I think that's an appropriate question, so I will put it out there.
That's a very good question. To Mr. Brousseau
I
or
can
Mr.
certainly
Wagner?
address the technical need, and then I might ask Lawrence to help that. So through you, the HRIS system, just to give you a state of where it currently is. So we went to public procurement for that solution. We got multiple respondents. We chose a top respondent based on the criteria we set. The initial budget, the capital ask that we brought to council was not sufficient. We did do a scan of the landscape at that time, but those costs just weren't realistic with that process. So we certainly could delay, but I would expect the same solutions to come back, the process to choose the same outcome, and then be coming back with that ask next time we meet. So we can certainly delay if we're uncomfortable with that cost. My concern is that many of those processors are already analog processes that are costing us money every time we do them. So there's certainly efficiency to be gained getting a solution like this in place earlier rather than later. I totally respect that it is a significant cost. We did not think it would come back quite that high, but the work that our project management and our HR specialists have done, I think show without a doubt that it will make its money back. There is certainly efficiencies to be gained with that system, and it modernizes a lot of our processes, both for onboarding and offboarding, which I think has a lot of value. For the EDRMS project, I may pass it to our clerk sponsor, if that is okay.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Mike's done a fantastic job at presenting the needs of the EDRMS project. It is a project that has been in the works since the beginning of this council term. And with the passing of the classification and records retention bylaw, it clarified a definite need to update our requirements to move to a cloud system. And get our old records in a state where we are preserving them electronically, but also in an appropriate fashion to keep them preserved. So, it is definitely a need. There's a duplication right now. There's several versions. This also streamlines the efficiency of searching, also increases the metadata, and so just responding to the requests a lot faster. And so this would get us to a legislative standard that is probably more appropriate. So it is in council's hands at this point.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Bonet, did you have any other questions about the financing from Director Wagner? You're already out of the queue.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. So, I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm not gonna try to spin it any other way. I respect that staff and our Director of IT is standing in front of us. I'm uncomfortable with the timing. I'm gonna go door to door saying that as a councillor looking to be a third-term councillor, that I'm going to be supporting a fiscally responsible budget, to fight inflation, and I somehow feel like we're trying to slam this through before the election and before the budget. So I'm just trying to be open and transparent. I'm just not really comfortable with this based on the timing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bernay. And just one little point before I go to Councillor Patcheriva, and I'm going to ask him to go back into the queue because I took him off when I went to Councillor Bernay. So if you can go back in the queue, Councillor Patcheriva, before I go to the Madam Mayor. Again, I talked to the CAO in between the questions, and he mentioned that, again, we already have given council direction on these two items, and we have received approval. Basically, because this amount is an overage, they are asking for additional support, as we were seeing here. I think we do have some options to Councillor Bernay's sensitivities on this with the election coming up, that there is the deferral we could go through to move it to the next meeting, or until we start going through that budget process and have it looked at. But let's go to Councillor Patcheriva first.
Thank you, Chair Russell. And just a question, because I saw it in the projects, but maybe I missed it in the presentation. 2022-3, so website improvements. That's the front-facing, in my opinion, the thing that the residents see. We've talked about being customer-friendly, and COVID's shown us that we need to be, have these forms and things on our website. Our website, with all due respect right now, we all know it, it's crappy. And hopefully this will heighten it. But I want to be assured of the fact that this is the best website we can get. I mean, we were sold a website about 4 years ago. Well, it'll make do. You know what? I don't want it'll make do. You know what? Give me the Cadillac. If I want a cigar lighter in the ashtray, I want the ability to put a cigar lighter in the ashtray. I don't want to be told a year later, well, you know what, that doesn't have that capability. So give me all the bells and whistles and the ability to turn them on rather than something, and again, this is BL, this is before Lawrence. You know what, this is what council will go for, right? This is the amount that we can push through. So tell me that's over with, please. And tell me we're going to address all of the needs we have right now and 5 to 10 years looking out. Not that you have a crystal ball, Lawrence, because if you do, we'd go to the track and we'd make $1 gazillion. But I waylay my concerns. I'm less concerned about the additional spend, but the functionality going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Patcheriva. That sounded like a question to Director Wagner. And we also have the CAO with his light on. So I think Director Wagner had his hand up previously, so I'm going to go to him first, and then we'll go to the CAO. Director Wagner?
Through you, Chair Russell, to Councillor Patcheriva. Great question. In the regards to the IT projects and the IT list, I'm fully confident that we have the funding resources to deal with those. Further, we've been successful in the past to leverage modernization grants and the like. If you recall, we just got another $90,000 to deal with the planning system application. So I'm fully confident with that. I do want to remind council, as part of the 2020 corporate master plan, these were all identified as projects that were priorities for the town. And when, as Mike indicated, we want to be fair and transparent to come forward to council to when there's a variance or there's costs that are incurred or changes or prices that were not necessarily accurately reflective. I think it's appropriate for us to do. When it comes to the HRIS system, I would highlight that that's over a 5-year period. So that's a 5-year contract. And we've sought to optimize and reduce costs through that by front loading the contract. I looked at the present value of funding based on interest rates that borrowing costs would be and such. And it's actually the lowest possible option, but we have a cost deficit or shortfall of about $89,000 the first year, and I think our annual operating costs are $32 per annum going forward. But I do feel confident that we will have the financial resources. I do feel confident that these will support and improve processes and efficiencies, whether it's document management, T4 management, going to employees, making things more self-service and staff more efficient. I'm confident on all of those, Councillor Patcheriva.
Thank you, Director Wagner. And our CAO, if you'd like to give your thoughts.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the website question, because I think Director Wagner has spoken a little bit about the HRIS project and the ERMS project. that was in there. I think, you know, should we delay it? Can we live with that? Yes, we can live with that. But I think you're hearing from both our Manager of Enterprise Services and our Director of Finance, Innovation and Administration. They've got a plan moving forward. Put that aside to Councillor Pachariva's question around the website, and I'll let Mr. Danny speak to the technical, I think, limitations or the technical capabilities of the website. We are always trying to bring the best possible project forward. And so will this website, is this the Cadillac of websites? Yeah, I think it is the Cadillac of websites. Does it have every bell and whistle? And are we cognizant of the dollars and cents that go with it? Absolutely we are. I think we always need to be cognizant and be fiscally responsible and be looking at when we expend dollars, what that looks like. So dollars and cents is absolutely on the top of my mind. Do I want to bring you a Ferrari at times? Absolutely. This is a Cadillac, it's not a Ferrari, and it's a very good vehicle. And it will drive well, and it will have all the bells and whistles, and it will be very comfortable. Budget wasn't an issue, financial limitations wasn't an issue, yeah, we could always do more. There are $1 million websites, and there are, you know, tens of thousands of dollars websites like our previous one, and this one, you know, is a couple $100,000. And so I think you get what you pay for in a lot of ways, but this is a very good website. I want to put council's mind at ease. We are going to do some beta testing. Mr. Danny can speak a little bit to, you know, website redevelopment and what we've been doing, if you'll indulge me.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Mr. Deanne.
Thank you, Mr. CAO and Chair. And through you, just a little bit of point of clarification for committee this evening. And Director Wagner can confirm if, in case I am incorrect, but the report in front of you this evening and the two financial asks that our Director of IT is making are not part of the website redevelopment. The website project is well underway. We're about to actually launch beta testing, both internally and externally, in the coming weeks, and things are going very well. We're very confident that the website that we're putting forward is going to be a top-notch website that is going to meet the needs of both our internal stakeholders, but also our residents as well. And of course, launch of the new website is scheduled currently for the first week of October. But like I said, we're going through a lot of beta testing right now, both internally and externally, and we're very happy with where we are with the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deanne. Councillor Pachariva, you still do have the floor. Did you have any other questions?
No, just so long as it's better than the other one, and when, you know, if I can't find something on there, how do I expect a resident to find it? So I'm in Mr. Deanne and Mr. Kirkopoulos' hands. I don't need a Ferrari. A Mercedes will do. But you know what? I have that hair on my tongue when we've got to spend money every few years because what we've got is obsolete. So there we go.
Thank you, Councillor Pachariva, and let's just hope that any of those vehicles end up in any of our fleets, no matter if they're a vehicle or a computer. We will now go to Madam Mayor for the last questions. Madam Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, directly to Mr. Wagner, just so that I'm 100% clear, because I do have questions about a number of these projects, but what you're asking us to do tonight is to recognize that we have approved projects, that there are certain projects that need to be done, and you've identified those. You've identified the cost, and you're telling us that the money is available in the reserve. Regardless of what we approved before, there's money available in a reserve. Am I correct on all of that?
You, Chair Russell, to the mayor. Yes, you're correct on that. We looked at the availability of funds. These were identified as future potential asks. We had highlighted or looked at the modernization grant fund or the infrastructure reserve fund to support these, but we obviously had to test out which is the most prudent approach, which systems work, and which is the most fiscally responsible approach to serve our needs. So you're
Okay.
correct.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, I doubt, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be difficult about this, but I doubt that there was a whole lot of thought that went into some of the elements of or criteria about why these things were needed, because there's plenty of technical reasons without looking any further. But anyway, I think that's kind of our job to look at beyond the technical. So the first criteria I would be looking at is impact on efficiency, and you do speak to that, and I appreciate that very much. However, I don't really know whether I should say that there's been an analysis in terms of effectiveness, in terms of implementing our strategic directions. There might be, but I'm just going to put it on the table because I think it's worth thinking about. But there are some items in here that have a direct impact on culture. And one of them that I am concerned about is the electronic document and records management system, but I've learned a little bit more tonight from Madam Clerk, so I'm fine with that. We're moving on. I just happen to have a few more questions. But the one that concerns me is number 3, the collaborative portal. And you haven't really explained why it's being delayed, but I think there's a risk. I think there's a risk, but you're not really telling me that because you're not talking about the soft stuff. So what is it about this collaborative portal that you think it can be delayed? When one of the most important things that we do here is communicate with each other, and we avoid a lot of problems with silos because there is a lot of communication, mostly off the end of people's desks. So could we please talk about that, because I feel I think this is being overlooked. So, Mr. Chairman, through you.
Yeah. Mr. Brousseau?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will say that some of the decisions to defer this project predate me, but I can speak to this project in particular. I agree with you. The collaboration project portal is absolutely critical to the town culture going forward. I know we've had a conversation about similar things. I agree that the ability for both internal and external staff to collaborate in an effective way in multimodal ways is going to be more and more important as we continue to move on as a town, as in a culture. I think right now, one of the great challenges we have that a project like this could address is the ways in which staff can collaborate on documents, generate new ideas, and try to replicate to an extent the face-to-face experience that we would have had previously in the town. To speak to why this project, my understanding of why this project was deferred is that it will be expensive and it will be complicated. Right now, we have multiple ways in which we communicate and collaborate as a town, primarily because we didn't do it in a planned, strategic way. We were forced to go online. We were forced to make quick decisions. I think most of those decisions were right, and I think they will be in hindsight. Some of those decisions will be less than ideal in hindsight. The collaboration portal, I think, will be an opportunity to try to bring those pieces together and find something sustainable. And I think rushing into a solution like that without the realities of what our current workforce looks like is likely a little bit early. So it's a priority of mine for sure. I definitely hear what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. But I want to do it right if we're going to do it, because I think it's one of those things, not to be overly dramatic, but that we only really have one shot at, so we want to do it right from the beginning.
Okay, so if I can't go to somebody's office to talk with them, then is the new and improved version, Mr. Chairman, going to help the way in which work is done in the future?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. The goal with a project like this would be to ensure that our staff, wherever they are, whether they're at town hall or at a fire station or at home or wherever, can effectively collaborate and work just in the same ways, maybe better than they were before. I know, recognize that we already have multiple sites that we service as a town, so we have different staff at different sites. So this is a model both to bring those folks into the fold, but also our folks that choose to work at home. So I think it can help to address historical challenges with distributed staff and the challenges we're feeling right now with distributed staff.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support this, and I want to be clear about why I'm supporting it. There's nothing new here. There's new titles, but the reasons, the rationale behind everything that you're asking for, whether it's immediate or in the short term, and there's a little bit of medium term, we've all heard before. We all know that we've not made complete investments. They're all good investments. They're just not complete investments. Things change so quickly. And I don't think you're asking for anything way beyond that. you can always question whether or not a reserve should remain whole or whether you should use it. And God knows there's going to be a lot of, money required in the next budget year, no question about it. We are not going to get any further ahead by avoiding this. And so, Mr. Chairman, I will be supporting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I see no other councillors in the queue, so I will then, there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer to receive and file for information report FN-11-22 regarding the 2022 Information Technology Project Status Update, and council approve the awarding of the HRIS contract to Starred Garden Corporation in the amount of $336,275, including additional funding of $163,275 from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund as outlined in Appendix B, and authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality, and approve additional funding for the electronic document and records management system project, the amount of $80,000 from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund as outlined in Appendix C. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I'm closing the vote. And that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Brousseau. We will now consider report LS-14-22, Staff Direction List Status Update. Do members of council have any questions? Seeing none. Councillor McPherson, please go ahead.
No question, just a thank you to the clerk's office for a very complete, detailed list. And I think there's many times where we wonder what is happening with a particular motion or a direction to staff, and this is fabulous to get this kind of information, and it's a document that we can work with. So thank you to the clerk's office.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson, and thank you to the clerk's office. There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Brandtjema that council receive and file as information report LS-14-22 regarding the staff direction status update. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And that vote carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. We will now consider 2023 Council Advisory Committee meeting schedules, report LS-12-22. Do members of council have any questions? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about Committee of Adjustment, and is that a regularly scheduled meeting, or is that something that just comes as applications come through? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk.
Thank you, Councillor. Through to the chair. It is a regularly scheduled meeting. So there are no changes to those.
So I didn't see them on the calendar.
Right. So we could add them. That's probably an oversight on our part, but we can definitely add that for sure.
Great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Russell. Through you to Madam Clerk, I see in the report you're advising that we scheduled the meetings every other month, which would be a new thing instead of monthly. I guess my only concern is with the Heritage Committee. If there's a time-sensitive application or a demolition permit comes in and Heritage Committee needs time to review planning applications or a demolition permit, or I'm just wondering how that's going to work for timelines. It could be 2 months out, before we could address it. So just if you could give me some more detail on that, how it would work.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. To Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through the chair to the councillor, we could make accommodations for that and be flexible, and so that's no problem. If there is a timeline associated, especially if it's a legislated one to respond, then those would be added meetings for sure. This is just to state, the frequency, but there is provisions to add should there be needed.
Okay, that's perfect. I was just a little concerned when I was reading the report. I think that would work, so we would just call, an extra meeting to handle something like that.
Correct, and we could even put in temporary placeholders just in case that those are needed, and we already have them in the calendar, so.
Okay. No,
Okay.
That would be great, because sometimes there are very time-sensitive items that come to the Heritage Committee. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank Councillor Timmers. There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers to receive and file for information report LS-12-22 regarding the 2023 Council Standing Committee and Advisory Committee meeting schedules and approve the 2023 meeting schedules as outlined in Appendix A and Appendix B of the report. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. There being no additional reports to consider for the General Business and Finance Committee agenda, we have now concluded the General Business and Finance Committee agenda. We will now rotate and allow Councillor and Vice Chair Greg Reimer to assume the chair at this time for the Community Services and Infrastructure Committee agenda. Chair Reimer.
Councilor Russell motioned to the bullpen, and the bullpen answered. Community Services and Infrastructure Committee agenda. 9.1 delegations. There are no delegations this evening. For this part of the agenda are reports. We will now consider report PW-30-22, Public Works Q2, Q3 2022 update. Do members of council have any questions? It's a big report. Lots of stuff going on. There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor. Can I move it myself? No. Councillor Russell. I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell. Receive and file report PW-30-22 regarding Public Works Q2, Q3 update. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, and that motion is open. Thank you. Thank you, and that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Number 10, confidential items. We have no confidential items this evening. Number 11, committee remarks. Do we have any committee remarks tonight? Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to briefly I don't want to speak to the report, I just want to speak about the way in which we're going to look at an important document like this in the future. This is an excellent document. This document has guided us throughout the year. We've had complete information on every project. And my question is whether or not this staff could consider for the next, in preparation for the next budget year, that we begin to quantify the report by establishing what the budgets are, for example, for road rehabilitation. What's that percentile that we're going to be looking to achieve each year? We could do it for all the budgets. We could do it for community services infrastructure in order to further, because we've already started to do this, but we only had a couple of years where we were breaking down what percentages we were going to use to support these major projects. And I think it's going to be very important in the future. And so I'm just using the road one because it's easy and it's one that people understand. If we don't spend a minimum of this up to a maximum of this, then what's the outcome going to be? If we don't purchase more property for parks, which may cost this up to here, plus what our parks master plan says about how much more land we need, where will we be? If we don't do that, I'm afraid that we're going to be, the pressure's going to be on, and we may start making decisions that aren't quite as tight and focused as we have in the past. I just wonder what the CAO might have to say about it, other than, you know, just patting me on the head and telling me it's a good idea. But I think it is an important process to begin to think about.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Comments, Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. You know, I think what the mayor is talking about, and we have started to do this in the last few budgets, is really look at the buckets and how we're spending money in those buckets. We're looking at, you know, what we often call conventional hard infrastructure, and then we're looking at sometimes what we're calling social infrastructure. And we've segmented those buckets and tried to align them to council priorities in theme areas, and then the appropriate budgets that go in those areas. I think the mayor's taken it a step further and said, you know, if we're going to do it that way, and if we're going to segment things that way instead of by departments, and sometimes, you know, doing things by departments makes sense to us. We're seeing things internally, but to residents, they look at services, and services around infrastructure, whether they're community services pieces of infrastructure or public works pieces of infrastructure, actually don't matter to them. What matters to them is this is getting done or that's getting done. How we fund it internally, which department oversees it, less of an issue. So I think we can start to do that more. I think one of the things that we're likely to talk about with the new council, and I can say it to you know, this council, is we've got a strategic plan that has a 10-year horizon. We want to reaffirm that strategic plan and then really spend some time looking at council priorities, then starting to align those council priorities that a number of you will hear through the election and post-election, and looking at how do we start apportioning monies and how do we start apportioning time and resources and energy. And then you overlay with that the fact that we've got a budget process coming and we have a yearly budget process. So those are things we want to do. We want to, you know, start looking at things, you know, a number of municipalities as they advance their budget approach, start looking at almost pre-approved budgets and buckets of money for various infrastructure, and then anything above that really starts to be the conversation or starts to be the debate that is had. So those are things that I think we're exploring, we're looking at. I think the maturation that we're doing with Director Wagner and Ms. Truwala and the team in finance, as well as the senior leadership team, will allow us to do more of that. But it is definitely something we're thinking about. We hear it every year in terms of hard infrastructure versus social infrastructure, and you know, how much should we be spending? What does it look like in those particular areas, and what are council's priorities? And so, yeah, I mean, that is not a placating statement. It is something we're looking at it, and I think it is something that we think is equally as important as well.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Lynn.
Seeing no other remarks, there being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 9:53.
Thank you, everyone online. Have a great night.